I call to order the regular city council meeting for Monday, August 19th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. This time I'd please ask you to silence your cell phones or put them on vibrate to limit interruptions and out of respect to those who are speaking, either from the council or to the council. Moving on to item number 1 on the agenda, which is the roll call.
Blessum.
Here.
Fuller.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Pittner.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Samuelson.
Here.
I will announce too, the mayor has given me a moment to let everyone know that tonight we are going to go fully electronic for our voting. We've been for the last couple of months doing both electronic and roll call. So instead of calling roll tonight, we will be just initiating votes. So council members, please hit save after you hit your vote button. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. Moving on to item number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's actually the third pledge I gave today, so that's Pledge of Allegiance. So moving on to item number 3, the mayor's report. Quite a heavy load, but to start off with, a very special person in my life is celebrating a birthday today. And so, Mom, you're out there. Enjoy your 85th birthday, and hopefully I'll see you after the meeting. So congratulations, Mom, and I love you. Moving on, I should have paused there a little bit. Moving on, we've since our last meeting, we've had some discussions, meeting on some air quality monitors for the city. Was at an Old Main Society meeting at MSU. Had some one-on-ones with the city manager, ribbon cutting celebration of 60 years at First Western Bank, fundraiser for the local firefighters family. That was, I think, a tremendous success. So for those who attended that, thank you so much. It was a wonderful event. Task Force 21, also a meeting with Krause Anderson, a sister city discussion in reference to our sister city agreement with Shane, Norway. We will be talking further about that with members of the Shane delegation as we get closer to the Husfest. Also did a welcome for a group from the Bush Foundation, meetings with Visit Minot. We also had a business after hours last week, Freedom Fest on the Minot Air Force Base. I stopped at, spoke to Sir Toma today, just finished up a meeting with Representative Kelly Armstrong at Minot State University. A couple other things I want to point out since they are just right tomorrow. We are going to, I'm going to take part in a welcome back to the teachers and staff at Minot Public Schools tomorrow. That'll take place up at Minot North High School tomorrow afternoon. And then tomorrow I'll be part of a group that welcomes 40 to 45 business people from Fargo, West Fargo, and the Moorhead Chamber of Commerce who are going to do a fly-in today and then on to Williston tomorrow. So are there any questions? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 4 on the agenda, the city manager's report. Harold.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I don't have a whole lot to report on tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have with regards to the memo that's prepared. And if there's no questions on that, then it's the second meeting of the month, and our finance director has a brief presentation prepared for the council and the public.
Any questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we'll turn it over to Mr. Lakefield.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'll try to keep this brief. Just with the budget time that we're going through here, there's been a lot of discussion on several things. So we want to touch on one of the hot topics, and that is our level of reserves. So we're going to have some general discussion on where these come from, what the purpose is for them, and then have some policy discussion or future discussion surrounding that. So we've dubbed this Reserves 101. So we're going to talk a little bit about funds, and this was used in a previous presentation, so this is a little bit of a quick review on the types of funds and what the purpose is and what the funding sources are. So governmental funds, general fund is the one we're most familiar with. That's our largest fund operating in the city. It covers things like police, fire, all of those types of things. The primary funding source is property taxes. We have capital projects funds, and that includes capital equipment, capital infrastructure, and capital flood control. We have special revenue funds. We have a number of those: transportation, library, the NAS biota plant, which is a new one, flood control maintenance, which is relatively new, the emergency fund, Central Dakota MPO, which again is new, and then our various sales tax funds. The last one that we have is the debt service funds of the governmental funds. Then we have the enterprise funds, all of those: parking ramps, water, sewer, sanitation, cemetery, parking authority, and the airport. So again, talking about the different types of funds, different sources of revenue. Governmental funds, typically that's where the bulk of your property tax levy goes to. State aid distribution, some sales tax goes into there, particularly the portion that's designated for property tax relief. License, permits, fees, grants, fines, interest earnings are the general sources of revenues. The uses, again, public safety, library, assessor's office, legal, human resources, finance, IT, all of those administrative departments, property maintenance, and then some infrastructure and capital purchases. Enterprise funds, those are things we operate like a business: airport, sanitation, cemetery, parking, and again, those revenues come from fees that we charge related to those operations and interest earnings. The uses, that's the services that we provide that people are paying us, like the water, sewer, those types of things. So municipal budget law, this is in North Dakota Century Code, the section dealing with the municipal budgets, and we've highlighted this section in yellow here, and it tells us at the end of the fiscal year, the balance of each appropriation becomes part of the general unappropriated balance in the municipal treasury, and it goes on to have some more details. So essentially what that means is that appropriation lapses at the end of the year. There are a couple of exceptions with that. If we are engaged in a contract or we have contracted for services that haven't been fully completed yet, we can encumber that appropriation into the next year. But once that appropriation lapses at the end of the year, that money goes into the fund balance and it loses its identity for what it was originally appropriated for. So for example, if we have a line item that is appropriated for salaries at the end of the year and we don't spend all of that money at the end of the year, that appropriation lapses, that money that we did not spend becomes part of fund balance, and that's the identity that it has, is its fund balance. It's cash, and that's what we commonly refer to as reserves that are available in the future. This is a spreadsheet that was used. City Manager Stewart had a slide in his presentation that highlighted some of the reserves in the various funds and the different components that came with that. And we had a request, asking for the data that was underlying that slide. And then the further request is to do a forecast of where we might end up at the end of 2024 and even projecting into 2025. So this was a bit of a stab at coming up with a number with that. There are a lot of moving pieces that come into play with this. How much of what's appropriated will we actually spend, what's going to be on the revenue side of things, as well as timing issues sometimes come into play too. The one thing I wanted to highlight that goes along with that fund balance that we carry, this is an excerpt from our CIP, and it's actually longer than this. This was just the part I could fit onto the slide. But this is for the 5-year period, And the total in that 5-year period for the CIP is at just over 612,000, almost 613 million dollars. Of that, we were funding about $370 million with state and federal dollars. So the balance of that comes from some other source. And I've highlighted in yellow some of the ones that are going to be included here in the CIP, sales tax dollars. And I'll caveat this, that flood control is a big number in this CIP. And of course, we have sales tax dollars that are dedicated to paying for flood control and things like NOS. So we would anticipate that those would be a big number. One of the things at the very bottom there, the local revenue bonds is $100 million. And that's a number that we're saying that we don't have another funding source, so we're gonna go out and bond to support these projects. And the reason we highlighted that, of course, $35 million from other, is this is where some of that reserve balance comes into play when we're looking at future projects and how we're going to fund that. We know with this large flood control project that we are going to have to finance that to complete the project. So kind of like when you're buying a house, you know it's a big ticket purchase. We don't go and buy the camper and the boat and the four-wheeler, everything else when we know we're going to buy the house and have to borrow money to do that. So that's where the balancing act starts, that we know we have these big ticket items that we will have to finance for 30 or 40 years. How can we accomplish these other projects that we also need in the meantime without overextending ourselves somewhere? So that's where we start to look into the future a little bit and balance what we have in reserves with what we know we have coming in the future. And of course, that's a sliding scale on both ends of that picture. We have to manage our budgets and the revenue picture on this side to make sure that we are as efficient as we can be. But also when we're looking into the future, there are a lot of things that come up that we aren't able to predict or forecast very accurately. So it's a balancing act, and how much is enough in reserves to have in case those things happen, and how much is too much, and how much is not enough. So this just cites some of the sources that we have that we use to put this information together. These are available on the city's finance webpage. And again, this was meant to be just a quick little snippet to get conversations started and to show you some of the background information that we use when we're doing some of these things. And I'll certainly answer any questions that you might have.
Mike?
Thanks, Dave. This is helpful. You know, I had some of the requests that you put together, and I appreciate that very much. So just to be clear on a couple of things. So when we've got the numbers that you're showing right now, which shows $100 million in potential bonding, just looking forward, it's a broad strokes look right now. As we make decisions on things like buying property by Public Works, or you know, spending an extra $2 million on a $1 million project for the railway quiet zone, or working with the Broadway Circle project for $1.4 million out of reserves, that's all working towards that number. It's hurting us, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, yeah, that is part of the equation. It's a balancing act. It's literally the balance sheet. Whatever we take out of the piggy bank today is not available for a future project. Yeah.
Right, so just if I can continue, Mr. Mayor. So in decisions over the last couple months, and actually even the ones just since I've been on the council now for 6 weeks, we've already got well over $3 million that we've made in decisions that's making that bonding picture worse as we go forward. And so, you know, Dave, I'm addressing you, but this is as much to my colleagues as anyone else. These are the types of decisions that make our future look a lot more difficult. And these are the types of property tax decisions that affect the people of our city. And so that's why I would urge my colleagues to take a look at these things as they come up, because we all understand the SIP picture looking forward. This is not an easy or a simple picture as we're going here. And we're making it more difficult for ourselves with each decision that's made. Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Dave. Moving on to item number 5, Planning Commission. Moving on to the item 5.2, public hearing, preliminary plat, the Copacetic addition. Now is the opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of or against the preliminary plat. Second call for those who wish to speak on item 5.2. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I think we need a motion to close the public hearing and approve the,
Apologize. Make a motion to close the public hearing.
and Mark, you seconded it?
I do.
Okay. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please initiate the vote. Mine didn't go.
Popped up for anybody?
Nope.
Hold on, let me cancel that. Let's start it again. Anything?
Do I need to back out?
Don't have to. Mike's touching something. Okay, hold on. Let's try it one more time. Anything? Okay, I'm gonna call the roll and we'll see if it works on the next item. Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
yes,
Pittner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Blessam.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion passed. Moving on to item 5.3, public hearing, public zone plan review, public works, salt and sand building. Now is an opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of or against item 5.3.
Oh, okay,
Yep,
sorry.
there.
Second call for anyone wishing to speak in favor of or against the public hearing, public zone plan review, public works, salt and sand building. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that we close the public hearing and approve the item.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Paul. Any discussion? Seeing none, please initiate the vote. There we got it.
That one?
Yep.
Oh, I got mine. I clicked onto another tab.
Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser, Olson,
yes,
Pittner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Moving on to public hearing 5.4 preliminary plat and zoning amendment. Now is an opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of item 5.4 or speak against.
Mr. Mayor, can
Yes, go ahead, Paul.
I request Doug Diedrichson come and give us some background on this? I know this was a kind of a, it's been a while, I wasn't able to rewatch the planning commission meeting
Okay,
from its original. Can I just get some background, how we got here, where we're at?
yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. So what we have here is an item where the planning commission has departed from staff recommendation on their recommendation to you. And so staff is looking for a little bit of guidance here. The guidance that was given by staff to the planning commission was this zoning map amendment does not complement the current comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan includes a future land use map, which has this property designated as gateway commercial. This entire corridor is designated as gateway commercial. This is Highway 2 as you come in from the east. It's a plan document. It can be amended, but currently this zone change would not complement our current plan. It would not be in alignment with the current plan. So I guess what we're looking for as staff as guidance here is if we're going to go forward with this zone change, we're looking for guidance. Do we want to shift that future land use designation on the north side of Highway 2 from gateway commercial to light industrial, which would be a complementary designation for an M1 zone? We're just looking, it's a gate, the reason why staff didn't recommend to the applicant to just apply for a future land use amendment is being gateway corridor, this is a corridor designation for future land use. And just pulling a single property within the gateway out of a corridor land use wouldn't really be appropriate. This is one we need to kind of look at as a whole. And there are multiple properties on the north side of Highway 2 that have this gateway commercial designation. So staff has provided findings of fact, Planning Commission has provided finding of fact and a recommendation. Staff is just looking for some guidance as you go ahead and you discuss this issue. If you are looking to approve the zone change from currently it is C2 to M1, we need to bring our comprehensive plan in alignment with that zone change. So I guess our recommendation to you is if you want to move forward with that, give staff guidance on how you want us to change that future land use map on the north side of Highway 2. And we would also recommend that you hold off on second reading and approval of any zoning map amendment in there until that future land use map amendment can be completed so that we are in compliance with our zoning ordinance, which does require all zoning map amendments to be complementary to the comprehensive plan. And with that, I can stand for any questions you might have.
Are there any questions? Rob?
Doug, real quick, are there any commercial facilities out there other than the gas station currently on the north side of Highway 2?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Fuller, there are uses that could fall under our commercial use with either permitted or conditional use, and there are also uses that can fall under our manufacturing zone with both conditional and permitted uses. Those two zones are very close to one another. It's the highest density commercial, and the next level up is M1. So since they're adjacent to one another, there's a lot of crossover in allowed and conditional uses between the two zones.
Can I continue?
So it's tough to answer that question because a lot of what's going on there can be done in C2 or done in M1.
Okay. So, I mean, and the reason I ask is, I mean, I've lived in Minot almost all of my life. It's always been industrial, manufacturing, whatever it is out there. I don't see that it'll ever be a commercial zone where people go shopping. If that's what we're talking about, I know that's not necessarily all we're talking about, but I was just trying to figure out what you guys, so would it be more appropriate, would you say, to maybe zone the whole thing M1 and change the?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Fuller, we're not talking about zoning right now. We're talking about our comprehensive plan, and we have multiple designations for our future land use. If you want to go this direction, and the Planning Commission, their thoughts where the north side of the highway is, like you said, is industrial, has been industrial, likely will be industrial, we could argue that it was in error that we placed gateway commercial on the north side of this highway, and to open up development in the future for what this land is most marketable for, we should look at amending the plan. It's more of a procedural question by staff because we've gone out of compliance with our ordinance by recommending a zone change to what is not a complementary zone. Each of these designations has a list of complementary zones. If we want to go this direction, we can amend the plan and we can just say, hey, the plan now is to make that an industrial area, and amend the plan, and then all of the staff's arguments for not satisfying the evaluative criteria disappear, because they are primarily based on the plan says this.
Okay.
You know,
That's what I needed.
we're required to make comment based on what the plan says. So,
Mark?
Thank you. So, and I didn't get a chance to drive out there, but if we're going further, what's further east of this subject property?
Mayor Ross,
That's still
Alderman
ag,
Janser, once you go east of this property, and now I'm talking about the whole property as a whole, not the subdivided lot one. Pre-subdivision, the broad acreage that exists, the eastern boundary of that is where we abut the western boundary of the city of Surrey's extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's where
So it's that.
our
yeah, it's
two
not-
jurisdictions meet at their
Okay,
property
gotcha.
line, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
Thanks, Doug. So I did have a chance to go through and watch the entire planning commission. So there was, to me, there was a lot of discussion about, you know, where this would eventually end up and what would likely be out there. I mean, I think of it, if you start all the way, almost at the fairgrounds and work your way all the way east, your M1, M2, M1, 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 all the way to dawn to dusk, or I can't remember what it's called now, the gas station. You've got one odd mobile home zoning there. And I realize we're not talking zoning. I'm kind of going back to where Rob was here. But that seems to me to follow that route. I mean, this to me makes sense that it would be M1 and should have been from the beginning. I think I saw comments during the Planning Commission, I don't know if it was you or one of your colleagues, that was saying this goes back into the 60s when it came out of ag, and we think into C2 at that point.
Mayor
that correct?
Ross, Alderman Blessam, yes, on the zoning map that Ward County adopted in 1962, they placed their C-2 designation on it. Now, Ward County does not have a general commercial district. That is a highway commercial district, which is really the only general commercial district that the county has, because all of their commercial is obviously focused on their main highways. We have found no evidence that the zoning was ever changed by Ward County from C2 to anything else. It would have been, likely had no zoning designation prior to that. This would have been adopted when Ward County instituted zoning ordinances. And so it was brought in by the city into our ETJ, and the ordinance reads that we bring these properties in and place them in a zoning district of our own that most closely aligns with their current zoning district. And that's done so that people who have these properties entitlements stay in place, even though they're changing jurisdictions. We aren't trying to take away people's entitlements when we bring them into our zoning jurisdiction. If they're in using it for something, we want them to be allowed to continue to use it for that. So really, we have no evidence that the zoning has ever been anything other than a C or a C-2 on this property. That's why it got that zoning designation. Again, we go back to those future land uses. It's all procedural for us. Right now, the plan, it's your plan, whether adopted or inherited. And it's also yours to amend if you feel as though from the fairgrounds to the eastern edge of our ETJ, it is in fact industrial and should in the future be industrial. Staff would just be looking for, you know, guidance. If you pass on, you could say we pass on first reading and send staff out to start a future land use amendment, which then would be brought through staff analysis, planning commission, and then brought back to you again with a recommendation, and that would be an amendment to our comprehensive plan and the future land use map. That would then bring it in line with light, our recommendation would likely be light industrial, which then M1 would be a complementary zone of that future land use designation. And we would be inside of our rules by making the zone change at that time.
If I can continue. So what is that, what would that process look like? You're saying we could pass this on first reading tonight, and then we'd have a parallel path running where this is in progress, as well as an update to the land use ordinance as well?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Blessam, yes, we wouldn't even actually have to do any sort of ordinance amendment. So we would, for the future land use map as part of our comprehensive plan, and you can amend that plan with a single reading and notification. It does not, it's not an ordinance, so it doesn't take first and second reading. So this application for zone change could be approved. The ordinance could be approved on first reading. Then our recommendation is just hold off on second reading, and we'll bring you the comprehensive plan map amendment and second reading of this ordinance at the same meeting. And you can pass them both at that time, and then we're in compliance with our own ordinance at that time, because our comprehensive plan map and our zoning map would then align.
So if I can continue, so what would the timing be, Doug?
We would have to bring sorry, Mayor Ross, Alderman Blessing, we have to bring it for analysis before the Planning Commission. However, they've kind of given you their analysis in this application itself, so it would likely be a single meeting. I wouldn't anticipate any tabling, so it would go to the October Planning Commission, and then we could come back at the regular Planning Commission meeting in October for final approval.
Good. Any other questions? Thank you, Doug. Thank you. Continuing on with the public hearing, now is an opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of or against the proposal.
Mayor and council members, Travis Zablotny, 1412 12th Street Southwest, Minot, representing the property with the plat and rezone request. Just one clarification that I want to make, if depending on where you want to start, the long-range plan designation is gateway commercial, where on the east side of town, I would advocate that well over 90% of this property is already developed into uses that are unlikely to change in the near future, and most of them, as you probably have seen the map, are in some sort of an industrial usage at present. And so the property that we're proposing to be rezoned as M1 is the end of the line for the city of Minot. It would be all the property that would exist in the corridor that has not, that with a couple exceptions. There's a little bit of other undeveloped land as you come back towards Minot, but very little. In order for me to shorten up any presentation, just maybe by a show of hands, how many of you actually saw the Planning Commission meeting when we presented the information on this request? So pretty much everybody has. So I'm not going to go through in any level of detail like we did there, since you probably have already seen it. I'm going to give one quick bit of history on the property. We purchased this property prior to 2011 with the intention to develop it into industrial when the oil boom was here. We did that in conjunction with Minot Area Development at the time. They wanted to look at an extension of the Great Plains Energy Park, and in October of 2013, we went to Planning Commission with a plat, a rezone, and an annexation at that time, and as all M1 property, and that was approved by the Planning Commission, and then subsequently the month later was approved by City Council unanimously. And I do have copies of those minutes with me if anybody would want to see those. So there is some prior historical precedence per se that says, yeah, that makes good sense, that that's what this property should be. We did not follow through with that. We never did record that because the market changed not much after that time. And we decided it just didn't make sense for us to record it at that point. I presume that all of you saw the copy of the current, this would be 2 miles in your email. If not, I can hand that out. Did everybody see that? Yeah, okay. So as you can see, there's very little out there that is actually still zone C2 that isn't already M1. And so again, just advocating the fact that it makes sense. I do understand the intention of C2, and I don't think that that's in its intent was wrong, because yes, we want the entrances of our city to be presentable. We want people to, when they come into town, to see something that looks good, not a real rundown industrial type presentation. The project that is being proposed to be built on at least one of these parcels would be that. It would be a retail farm equipment dealership. And they're here as well, and they'll show you pictures of mock-ups of what they're looking to build. And I think it fits very well with the eastern side of town being primarily industrial, yet, you know, having the desire to have something that looks good and presentable as we come into town. We too want that property to look good because we have additional property that we'll want to sell in the future. And for most of you that know me, I have strongly advocated that we need to clean up the entrances to our city and make Minot a place where people want to live, and that means making it look good. And so that would really be our intention as well, to keep it there, and if we need to, make improvements. One of the things when I met with our planning director that was suggested even in this case was, why don't we do a gateway industrial? If we want to change our plan, maybe we not, we take that C2 designation and create it into a M1 gateway industrial, which has higher qualifications, higher requirements that make the entrance to our city something that we want it to be. And that might be a good compromise. The primary reason for the request for M1 is because if we don't have M1, then the only way an implement dealership is allowed into C2 is under special use. And under special use, that property would be able to remain as an implement dealership into perpetuity, should you grant that. But it does make it restrictive for the investor in that property in terms of who they can sell that to in the future. If someone comes to town and the use happens to fall into M1 without a zone change, they can't just go use that property for that purpose. And so it potentially would have a strong impact on the value of that property. It doesn't lend itself well to investors wanting to come and make the investment in Minot if they aren't secure in that investment. And it's a large investment. I have been guessing, strictly guessing, that this is probably a $10 million project when it's all said and done. And a much needed one, right? Ag is the root of this community, and that type of business will always be here and provide lots of jobs, provide lots of tax revenues for the city. They want to be in the city. I think one of the representatives here from Plains Ag will maybe visit about some of their prior experience when they first came looking for property and what they were told. We were a little bit shocked, but nonetheless, they want water, city water and sewer, so that they don't have to dig a pit for fire suppression for water. And then, of course, the services that come along with that. Not that this played into the conversation quite heavily into the Planning Commission. I don't know that it's as important today, since they have heard all the information and have recommended to this body to pass property and change it to M1, but there really is an unknown status of what the zoning is. And when we purchased that property prior to 2011, the only information we had is that it was zoned ag, and the only place we would have gotten that information would have been from the city of Minot. And when we applied in the application, and both in the minutes of the Planning Commission and the City Council showed that property was priorly zoned ag, being requested to be rezoned as M1. Now, it's been brought up that the county designated it as C2 back in 1962, and yes, I know that map exists. But when the city annexed that in 2011-ish, approximately, there is no document that shows what zoning it was and what zoning it became. The assistant planner was trying to find that document and he could not. So we really don't know what it is. So to say that there was some sort of importance on that, I think is probably a bit of a stretch. I think what matters is that it fits, that the city of Minot does a good job in its requirements on this gateway entrance in terms of what they want to see there from a business that would be allowed to be there under M1, and that, take care of the problem that way. Again, in repeating here, well, I'm not repeating, but many members of the city council that voted against this said, well, we absolutely want the project, but I just can't support a zone change because it goes against the rules. So the project itself makes sense. The city's been willing to place it there under C2 zoning with a conditional use permit because they know what it'll look like. We're just asking for M1, knowing that the likelihood of this is that it stays as an implement dealership, but we don't know what the future holds in certain times. And in order for the city to be both protective of its concerns with how that entrance looks and being friendly to investors. You know, it was my suggestion that we have this gateway industrial or place those requirements in as you pass it. You know, we just, that they meet C2 but are given M1 zoning. With that, would anyone have any questions?
Mike?
Travis, so the timeline that Mr. Diedrichsen just talked about, would that be acceptable from your side?
I think I'll let Patrick Fisher from Plains Ag answer that. I believe it would, but I don't want to speak for him at this point. I'll let him ask that.
Any other questions for Mr. Zablotny? Seeing none, thank you, Travis. Continuing on with the public hearing, now is an opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of or against.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Fisher, and with me I've got Brian Everson and his management staff for our operation in town. I oversee the Northern Plains operations. We have 9 stores in western North Dakota, strictly focused on the agricultural dealership. We're a Case IH and New Holland dealership. And the reason we're here is originally we went to the city planning for a shop addition on our current facility, which is in the floodplain. And the requirements to lift that new addition made it non-feasible for day-to-day operation. Then we went to a secondary review, a planning meeting, and asked about this property. And basically we're told maybe it'd be best you go for a little further east and not be in the city of Minot. Our business is built around Minot. We provide sales tax on in excess of $50 million in sales. We want to be in Minot, but we want to protect our investment. Travis alluded a little bit to it, that it's a $10 million investment. I think it's going to be north of that. I know one thing in life that's consistent is change. People change, people forget, owners come and go. We intend to be in this facility long term. The current one we've been operating out of for 40 plus years. But under C2 zoning, our only option is to sell to another dealership. A $10+ million building limited to a small segment of the economy. That's why we're asking for M1. Now, Doug and his staff have been great to work with the special use permit. The changes he's going to allow under special permit make it look like and operate like an M1, but we got no risk hedging for the future. So with this, I'll let Brian talk about the facility, but we've got a tentative facility design. We're ready to go. We're not going to move dirt this fall. We passed that, but as long as we can set ourselves where we get bids out there and get the contractors lined up for spring, and the timing permits that for whatever we got to do, I think we'll be in favor of it, because this is a long-term venue for all of us, myself included. Brian?
Well, I've been out that, Magic City Implement in Plains Ag 31 years. So it's time for me to drive to a different building. The main reason is as our growth goes from year to year, it just continues to grow. We need more technicians, we need more parts people, we need more people in the dealership infrastructure total. And we cannot do it with what we have right now. We're maxed out. Like Patrick said, we're in the floodplain. There is no option to add on to anything. And then, it's been in the same place for the last 40 years. Well, and I'm assuming you guys have seen the combine's growth in the last 40 years. We can't even get them in the main shop because they're too wide and they're too tall right now. So that's why we have the warehouse, and we can work out of the warehouse. But as a general, we just need a bigger location, bigger buildings. probably more of a safer work environment also with this new building comes along with overhead cranes. We don't run overhead cranes now because our roof height will not allow it. And it's just to meet the needs of our customers and expectations. As equipment grows, we need to grow with it. Well,
One other note. As Brian said, the equipment's gotten rather large. We're seeing 100-foot air seeders. We're seeing 60-foot draper heads on combines that you could only imagine in 30 years ago. This equipment, transportation of the equipment is very challenging, and we need access to either 83 corridor or Highway 2 corridor to bring it in and out of our operations safely. And that is one of the reasons we're looking out of town. We're not sitting in front of you asking to build it in the heart of the town because we need the space to move this large equipment in and out of our operation safely. And we're on the eastern front of the city extraterritorial asking for an M1 change. Anything else to add?
any questions for us?
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
you. Continuing on with the public hearing.
I do have one other comment if I could make, Mr. Mayor and City Councilman, in response to what Mike had asked in terms of timing. There are this property is contingent on rezone in terms of a close, and there are some sensitivities to some of that closing that needs to happen no later than November. So that is something that we were hoping to see, and it'll make some complexities if we're not able to get there. So I'm hoping that we can get there, should you decide to approve that. So
Continuing on with the public hearing for those who wish to speak in favor of or against the proposal. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Paul.
I would make the motion that we close the public hearing and approve the item as directed from the Planning Commission with the direction to staff to bring forth a text amendment to the future land use map with the designation of an M1 gateway industrial zoning. And if that makes sense, if it gets a second and Doug can come and speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mike. Discussion. Doug.
Mayor Ross, Alderman Pittner, that was a discussion that I had with Mr. Zablotny, and that has more to do with the fact that I was not here at the time the plan was constructed. As a professional planner, I've always been a proponent of, instead of placing things like gateway commercial future land use designations, we use overlay corridor overlay improvement districts. It allows you to add a layer of zoning that it doesn't matter if it's M1, C2, whatever's underneath. You want a beautiful corridor, you lay the overlay over it and increase design standards within your corridor. That would require a major text amendment to our current comprehensive plan. If the council wants to pursue that, I'm not opposed to it, but that would be a long-term project that I doubt that we could complete in time for November closings. Our recommendation would just be that you direct us to, if you want to approve this, direct us to change the future land use designation to light industrial, which would allow for this complementary zone to then be placed in that area. And then we could look out to the future in those gateway corridor overlay districts. I'm just of the opinion that those are the best tools for beautification within corridors. But we do not have a gateway industrial district to place on the future land use map currently.
So question to that, how do we move forward the project, meet timelines, go to M1 industrial? How do we ensure that the standards in which we hold this project to, which sounds like they're amenable to, Mr. Zablotny said, we're amenable to beautifying the corridors when you come into town. How do we ensure that this project is held to those standards along with future projects if we go with the major amendment?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Pittner, having seen their design, To be honest with you, the difference between what they're proposing to build and the C2 design standards, they're not that far off. The only difference that they want is some changes in location of street trees, and that has primarily to do with the fact that they're a dealership and they want to be visible from the highway. They want their wares to be visible from the highway. Staff is amenable to that anyways. I don't think it's going to be a serious blow to our gateway corridor, what they're proposing. They're not asking to build a copper smelter. They're asking to build a dealership. So I would feel comfortable just recommending that you, if you're going to approve it on first reading, just simply place the light industrial future land use designation on the north side of the Highway 2 corridor, where it's currently gateway commercial on the north side. And then we can look at doing some overlay districts to ensure beautification here in the future, if that's the direction you want staff to go.
Would that be, I'll look to the attorney or to the clerk, would that be an amendment to my motion to align with, if the second agrees?
If there's no objection to the council, it could be a friendly amendment, but I just recommend, Doug, would you be most comfortable restating the motion just to make sure everybody's on the same page?
So I would recommend a motion to approve the the zoning map amendment ordinance on first reading and direct staff to begin a future land use amendment on the north half of the Highway 2 corridor, changing it from gateway commercial to light industrial.
Kayla, can you repeat that? I'm just kidding.
No, I can't even type it in the little thing.
Is there any objection to that? And is that
That
what
would
you
be
fall
my
into, Paul?
intention, yep.
Any objection from the dais? Okay, then we'll go with that friendly amendment.
If I may continue.
Continue.
I would still like to direct staff for the overlays to ensure that the beautification of the corridors when they come into town, we hold them to a standard and there's prohibited uses, acceptable uses within those corridors.
Mayor Ross, Alderman Pittner, right now, all of the other current corridors still have that gateway commercial. The south half of Highways 2 still has that gateway commercial. Like I said, I don't think this single project is going to be a major blow to our gateway, but I will direct my staff and we will work diligently to bring some recommendations to the Planning Commission on how we can do some gateway overlays that would ensure beautification regardless of underlying zoning.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mark?
Not to belabor this, but I guess, and I'm in favor of what the revised motion is, but when you look at the map and you look at what's M1 out, how do you come up with a corridor with like 2 lots that aren't already M1 in a future plan? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me, and we get steered down these roads of now our hands are tied and we can't do anything because somebody wishfully thinking put that into the future land use plan. And I know you're not responsible for that, but I want to make the point because this isn't the first time we've run into something like this.
Mayor Ross, Alderman Janser, the goal was beautification of the gateways, and that was really the only gateway district that was developed. Again, that's why I am a proponent of overlay districts, because it allows you much more flexibility in underlying zoning.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add, Harold?
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, in somewhat in response to Mr. Janser, the comprehensive plan is an important document that communities use to help you transition from what you are today to what you want to be in the future. And so, and I want to state that there's a lot of time and energy and effort that goes into this. It was a 1-year process with a lot of community partners, reviewing over the comprehensive plan, reviewing over the map, and coming up and envisioning what do we want Minot to be 20, 30, 40 years from now, and how do we get there? And that's what's outlined in the comprehensive plan. So I guess I say that with, a word of caution, not that I'm opposed to, there's a reason why it's called a plan. right? It's adaptable, it's changeable to the circumstances and the time, but that's the vision and the goal of what we're trying to get to. And we try to hold to that as closely as we can, and I appreciate the work that staff has done in trying to hold us as close to that plan as we can. But at the end of the day, it is a plan, it is adaptable, it is changeable to circumstances, which is what is before the council for consideration this evening. I would urge caution that when these issues come forward to the council, that this takes some serious thought and deliberation. Because again, this is about transitioning our community of Minot from what it is today to what we'd like it to be in the future. And that's what that plan is trying to help us accomplish. Now, with that being said, kind of going back to a point that Alderman Blessum made earlier today with regards to the conversation with reserves, these decisions will have an impact to how effectively we can do things in the future. So if we make the decision tonight to transition this to manufacturing, that is going to make the opportunity of transitioning that to commercial in the future much more difficult. And when you have an intersection that comes off of a major highway and brings major traffic into our community, which is why it was designated as a corridor, commercial corridor coming into our community, if and when Minot continues to grow, when you have more traffic, there'll be more demand for commercial use of those areas. That is what the group that was reviewing the comprehensive plan and made the decisions to market it as what it is today in the plan, that's what they're envisioning in the future. Now, it's up to this council and this body and this staff today to determine how probabilistic and how realistic that potential is, and whether or not we want to adapt this today to meet this. But I would urge caution to the council about just routinely deviating from that plan to make everything fit, because you're making it more difficult to make it what you want it to be and what you envision it to be for the future. Again, I'm not arguing for the council to vote no on this tonight. I just want to make sure that's in the back of your minds and that's something you're considering as you do this. That comprehensive plan is important. It includes a lot of input from a lot of members of our community into what they want Minot to be for the future. So,
Thank you, Harold. Paul?
Mr. Mayor, and just so that I'm clear, and this can be to staff, whoever wants to answer this, this isn't a final say, correct? I mean, we're gonna see a staff recommendation come before this, before we read this on second reading, correct?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Pittner, yes, this will go, in the comprehensive plan, it does have an outline procedure for amending the future land use map, and it goes through staff analysis, planning commission analysis, and then city council analysis. And I would like to echo the city manager's assessment of the situation. I would also caution against regularly amending this. It is a plan, it is a vision. I came to you tonight with the recommendations of the planning commission. They gave me a directive to bring this to the city council and present it in this format. So again, I would echo the city manager's caution against regularly amending your plan. It is a vision that took a great deal of community input to develop. So it was our community's vision for our future. So.
Anything? Thank you, Doug. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any further? Seeing none, please initiate the vote.
Three, four? Still not every, okay, Pittner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson,
yes.
Blessum,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
yes,
motion passed.
Motion passes. Moving on to action item 6 on the agenda is public hearings. 6.1, public hearing for Engle Court Affordable Housing Complex. Now is an opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of or against item 6.1 to come forward.
Mayor Ross and members of the council, the City of Minot is a pass-through grantee for this project. Minot Housing Authority and Beyond Shelter will be constructing two 36-unit apartment complexes on 16th Street Northwest up by 31st Avenue. They will be doing an environmental review on that, as well as if everything goes correct through the application process. They will start a construction in the spring on the first complex, and then in 2027 on the second 36-unit complex. Totally funded by the state CDBG funds, the administrative as well as the land purchase. So there's nothing coming out of any local share or any local budgets. We are working with Beyond Shelter and Minot Housing Authority on getting the application submitted so we can proceed with the project. So I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Any questions of Chris? Seeing none, thank you. Continuing on with the public hearing on item 6.1 for those who wish to speak in favor of or against item 6.1. Now is your opportunity. Final call. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mark.
I move we close the public hearing and approve the item.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Scott. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please initiate the vote.
Did you get one, Alderman Janser? No? Okay. Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller.
Yes.
Motion passes. Moving on to item 6.2, public hearing demolition of dangerous building located at 112 8th Avenue Northwest. Now is an opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of or against to step forward.
Hello, my name's McLean Kolobach, and I'm the owner of that home. I'd like to thank you for your time today, what you guys do, I appreciate it. And apologize too, I know better. I've had financing issues, health issues, reasons that I can prove. But I don't know, I guess we all have problems at times, right? I do have a plan and some funding that can be coming in to remedy those issues with that, and I'd like to ask for the opportunity to delay that demolition until however would make sense for everyone, I guess. In the end, it's an issue with about everything, really, but there was an arson there. The firemen did me the favor of boarding the place up. And homelessness is a big problem in Minot. In my opinion, it's kind of ruined my life. They helped out. I appreciate that. There's other issues with it. People that I didn't raise, they trashed the place, burnt down the garage, brought in all kinds of garbage from places I didn't even know where it would have came from. I guess my one simple request is some time.
Any questions? Comments? Thank you. If there's nothing further, thank you. Or do you have more?
Oh, I was just wondering is that something that will be reviewed and then curbed for now? Or, I mean, delayed for
Well, we're going
the
to keep the
intro?
public hearing open.
Oh, sure.
And then,
Okay.
and then we'll process like the previous public hearings.
Mr.
That
Mayor,
sounds great.
I maybe do
Mark?
do have a question for Mr. Kolbach. So
Sure.
you stated that you have a plan and funding in place to rectify this situation. Can you provide some detail about that as to what you're talking about?
Yep. I've found that there's other different grants and funds where people that, like myself, need help. But this would be from the federal level for rehabilitation, getting it repaired. Also would, I don't want nothing to do with the rental business, really. It's kind of tough to control people. So actually, we'd like to kind of keep it boarded up and just repair it and get it sold. The exterior items that are there, I can sure remedy. The interior of it, I can repair that too. The state, I worked with 4 housing people that they said, they're accepted for funds. Don't discriminate against them. And we'll catch up with paperwork and payment later. I thought that was just fine. But what happened was their software itself didn't work. There's about 6 steps from my housing portal. It didn't acknowledge that home was even there. I said, you can come over, I'll make dinner. It's been there 100 years almost. But I couldn't even simply get through the software part for payment, And then in the end, they gave the money to a man that isn't owed to it at all, the renter. He sure took off. And I did what was right. Morally, I can prove it. I worked with them, hey, you got a little software problem here. I couldn't fix it. They didn't. I didn't get the money, basically bankrupt due to that program, in my opinion. But my plan would be, moving forward, would be getting some of the federal grants that would help and apply to this issue. Not that it would take so much to make it safe and clean, but just to kind of move forward. I've reached out with every person that kind of deals with homeless people with not much resolve at all, really. Whether or not they wanted to implement a sober living house or buy it or, do some kind of community project that would be beneficial. It's a problem.
Continue, Mark.
If I may continue. So your plan would be to apply for federal grants to fund dealing with the structures. And have you applied for any of them up to this point? Do you have applications active with the federal government?
None completed yet, though, but I guess it'd be a non-issue if it's going to get knocked over, I do have some that I could share with you, but I have other things too I'm going to sell, just to kind of get, some money to remedy and repair things that need to be done to get it worthwhile to sell again. I don't really want to rent it out, so if anyone's looking for a place.
Rob?
My question is, and I realize everybody has things going on, but in here, it says you guys haven't responded to us in 3 years from all the nuisance complaints and some of the building code violations and everything like that. I guess that right there is my big question. I realize people have stuff going on in their life all the time.
Yeah.
But why no response within 3 years until we want to knock them down?
Well, some of them I actually asked for the help that were burned down or whatever to get the homeless out. Please help. The firemen and the police department have been fantastic in that way, helping out. But even they can't keep them all out. It seems like they're still getting in. And not that it's their duty to necessarily always do that, but I appreciate that help. I have responded almost on the daily with police and firemen. they've helped on that level. But with the nuisance issues, like with garbage, Margie Zietz, I think, believes still works with the police department or worked with me. I talked with her several times, and she's helped out fantastically. So as far as that aspect goes, I guess I didn't officially come to the city council. I didn't know if that was what you were referring to, but I've been to this state capitol and a list long enough that it's depressing. I've went everywhere. I've tried. I can prove it.
Steph?
Mayor and Mr. Kolobakin, this particular matter for this demolition order is before the city council today by an order of First District Health Unit stating that the deteriorating condition of the property has become a hazard for the community. Do you have anything to speak to that and what you're doing to remedy that condition and any conversations you've had with First District Health Unit?
I agree. The garbage that got brought there, it's not from the home or any work or demolition or even where the tenants there. One day, well, there's about 8 pickup loads of garbage in the burnt down garage or whatever. So they're right, for sure, you know. It's boarded up so it can't be seen, but rodents could get in for sure. But I can sure do better. I don't mind going to landfill. But the other issues are people that live there, ultimately. I didn't raise them. It's hard to control people. Oh, all of a sudden you got a dog or two that wasn't approved. And I know ultimately that lays on me to police that, but until you get to it, get them out of there. And in other issues, it's tough to control people, and I think you guys would understand that. But yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Kolobakin, and this may turn into a question for the city attorney. So the 8th Avenue property, we're showing a deed holder on that one, and it's under contract. So is there I assume there's a contract for deed that's outstanding. There's a contract of some type where payments are being made. Do we have to do contact with both? Are both parties involved?
There should have been contact made with both parties if there's a deed holder other than Mr. Kolobakin on that particular property.
And so can you speak to that, sir? Is there a contract for deed on that property?
There's not. If you're talking about 112 8th Avenue, right?
101, actually.
Okay, that's a different one. That's, in my opinion.
And that is the
That is in the
next
next.
item.
that's
Oh,
the
I'm
next
sorry,
public-
I'm sorry.
Yep, yep, yep.
They're both 8th Avenue. It's
Yeah.
they're northwest, southeast, but yeah. I've reached out to the Ward County Recorder's Office, and when I bought the place, the people had passed away years ago, but it was pre-recorded through the attorney's office that it's kind of a done deal. I mean, they signed it, and for some reason, I've made several, in-person attempts to get that remedied, to get their name removed from it, but it is just mine. I've got the abstract.
So if I can continue, so actually, I apologize for that. We can hit that on the next one, but a couple other questions for you. So do you have other rental properties other than the ones that are before us tonight?
Yep.
Okay, and what state of repair are those in today?
Well, not all that great. I'm broke. And I'm going to take this as a warning for sure, or a complete loss.
If I can continue, Mr. Mayor. So one of the things that I think you're talking about, and I guess the overarching thing here, is that you've got tenants that aren't fulfilling their end of the bargain. They're doing things that you're not expecting. I came from this world. You may need a property manager. You may need somebody that's looking out for that, collecting your rent, doing your background checks, and doing the things that do that. Now, that costs money, but that's why I asked the question if there are others, because I get concerned. We've got these that we're going to have to deal with tonight. we're gonna have to make decisions here. But if you've got other properties that are headed down the same path, I would hope that you would work to get those on track. And it may mean a property manager to do that.
I agree. That was kind of part of the issue and plan. It was either sale or get them repaired, empty, clean, sanitized, and then sell them ultimately. My preference would probably be to sell them ultimately, but to get them empty and sanitary and work site zone repaired, for ultimate sale is what I'd like to do. And that would be kind of helped with federal funding, hopefully.
Anything else? Steph?
So Mr. Kolopakin, attached to the agenda tonight are several notices, one from the city and one from First District Health Unit. And you found your way here to the meeting tonight. When's the last time you spoke with anyone from the city or First District Health Unit about your properties?
Last week, today, as far as the city goes, almost.
Spoke with someone today with the city about these properties.
Yep.
Can you tell us who that person was?
His name's Luke.
Okay.
Tillema.
Do you have more, Steph?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Mark?
If I may. So, as we talk about this kind of in the abstract, I guess specifically, okay, so your plan would be to apply for federal grants, I guess, and do you have estimates of what kind of dollars that will require, what kind of costs are involved in bringing these buildings to a state that they would be no longer on the list to be demolished?
Sure.
And I guess, and when you, if I may just continue, perhaps Luke Tilmar, our building inspector, could give us some general idea of what, I mean, I've seen pictures of the outsides sent to me by neighbors and also I think by the city, but I haven't been in them, so it's tough to know what you're really dealing with there. But I guess to me that is significant to determining what we should do here.
I agree with you. The first thing I would do would be, make the exterior safe, sanitary, for the sake of Minot, and then second to that would be the interior repair, all that. And then the funding, that's something that could, the dollar amount that you were asking, to get them safe, sanitary, empty, per unit would maybe be 1,000 or less, not even. But then the repairs, that's kind of a different issue, pretty complex. I'd say it max maybe 10,000 piece, if that. Some of them aren't really all that bad. It's just a bunch of garbage people leave everywhere is the biggest issue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kolbach. I guess if I for one would like to hear from Luke and hear what he has.
Thank
to
you.
say.
You can be seated.
That's great, thanks.
Luke?
Good evening, Mayor Ross, Council. I was inside of this building along with First District Health, and it was shortly after that when we received the order to demolish. So the interior conditions are not sanitary or fit for human habitation at the moment.
Any questions of Luke? Paul?
Luke, there was a fire, thank you, Mayor. How extensive is that damage? Is it structural? Does this building gonna have to be torn down? Is the concrete compromised from the heat?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Pittner, the fire was in a detached structure, garage building, and the fire department responded so quick, the building is still standing. It did not spread to any surrounding buildings, so the the habitable, assumed to be, supposed to be habitable building, the single-family dwelling, did not sustain any fire damage. Structurally, it's hard to tell. Everything is covered. There's a lot of filth and dirt and garbage in the building, so I wouldn't be able to speak to the safety of the structure at the time, now. So.
Luke, were you forced to walk in there with PPE? Or did you have proper PPE?
Mayor Ross, yes, I did have proper PPE.
Rob?
Luke, and I know this is just going to be rough, but Mr. Kolbakken said he thought it'd take a few $1,000s. In your estimate, looking at it and seeing what you know through building inspections and everything else, what would you estimate it might cost to fix that place or make it so First District Health doesn't want it torn down?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Fuller, it's really hard to say because of the mitigation of what we can't see that's there, like mold and stuff like that could be everywhere that we can't see. So it's really hard to say. I know that companies that specialize in that type of work are not cheap. I would venture to say that it's going to be quite a bit more expensive than 10 grand a piece.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Luke? Thanks, Luke.
Mayor.
Yes, Harold.
Not necessarily a question or anything, but just so you know that in addition, there's an investigation on the cause of the fires. And so my understanding from talking with staff is we had the first fire and then everything was shut off, so there should have been nothing that would have caused a fire because there would have been no electricity or anything to the building, and yet we still had a second fire. So that's currently under investigation right now with the State Fire Marshal's Office and BCI. I would also state that we don't come to this point in the process lightly or easily. In fact, we try to avoid this as much as we can. I don't know if Mr. Billingsley can speak to how many neighborhood complaints we've had with regards to these properties and those kinds of things. But again, as you stated earlier, Alderman Fuller, it's been 3 years to get to this point. Worst case scenario, if the council is not willing to move forward with the directive from the Department of Public Health, at the least, I would encourage the council to table this if you're not going to move forward with the potential demolition, and staff can prepare to get you more details, but there are some concerning factors with regards to these properties.
Let's go with Mike first.
Oh, first of all, Mr. Mayor, would you rather have discussion within a motion, or do you want to entertain a couple more questions from
Let's,
staff?
is there any more testimony or anything that you'd like to hear, Stephanie?
I just want to see if there is a representative from First District Health Unit here.
Holly?
One thing when cities are contemplating destroying someone's property, and that's what's being requested in this specific instance. If you pull up the letter, it indicates that it wants the dwelling to be eradicated and including foundations, footings, and then the basement filled in. I mean, given that situation, you want to limit this type of action to that's absolutely necessary to the health and welfare of the community. Is it First District's health unit's impression that this is the least invasive means necessary to achieve that means? That's my
Come on up, Holly.
question.
Holly Breckus, First District Health Unit. I'm the Executive Director. Lisa Westman, she's our Director of Environmental Health. She could not be here today, so I'm not sure I'm the best person to get into the specifics of the situation, but I agree with Harold that, this is usually the means of last resort. If you wanted to table it, we could have further discussions, but I guess I don't know enough about it to speak to it in this kind of a situation, to be honest. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Do you have a question, Holly?
No,
okay.
It's more general, I think,
Okay.
maybe for our discussion.
Thank you, Holly. I think we're good. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor, for, or against this item?
I was just gonna say real quick, I'm working with McLean now. He didn't have anyone to help him before. I used to work with another I did property management for somebody else, Glenn Myers, in this town. And He had some really terrible, terrible places as well. But a lot of it is just trash, filth, whatever. I know at McLean's properties, he has, the electrical still good, the plumbing is good. He has in his possession from when he was doing well, he bought extra windows, doors, all that stuff, so he has all that stuff. And a lot of it's just windows, patching walls, stuff like that, except for that garage is gonna have to come down. We were gonna get started on it earlier, but the tenants just now got out of both those buildings. So he didn't have the money to evict them. Now that they're out, we're pretty much ready to begin. He was sick, so he couldn't, but we could definitely start tomorrow and keep in contact with Luke, make sure we're getting enough done that you guys would be happy.
Any questions or comments? Mark?
Ma'am, I guess I did have a question. So or for Mr. Kolbach, so so I guess when it was stated that, I didn't catch your name, ma'am, but it was stated that she's working with you, or is she on
Correct.
retainer with you, or on a salary, or what is the working arrangement?
Full-time every day.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can be seated, McLean. Any further comments? Seeing nothing further, what are the wishes of the council?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
We have a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. To close the public hearing. Any discussion on that? Okay, initiate the vote.
Yeah, then we can,
Okay.
for discussion.
Okay.
Sounds like Mike had something
Yeah, I have some
Right.
questions.
So,
Okay.
Are we doing discussion now?
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
we can.
we have to vote on closing the public hearing.
Yeah.
So let's take a vote on closing the public hearing. Initiate the vote.
No, Pittner's not working. Okay. Pittner,
yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson. Yes. Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
The public hearing is now closed. Now for further discussion, I guess possible
We need a
Yeah, so
motion.
well, I guess I'll make a motion that we move forward with the demolition for discussion.
Second.
We have a motion for demolition and a second. Discussion. Mike?
Okay. So for the city attorney, I just want to make sure they understand kind of how all this is laying out. So do we have a directive from First District Health Unit to move forward? Is it a recommendation? What's our legal obligation?
Mayor and Alderman Blessam, so what you have before you, the staff recommendation is that the city council find that the residence located at that 8th Avenue Northwest address is a dangerous building as defined in city ordinance, and to direct city staff to collect 3 bids to demolish the buildings and select in the best and most cost-effective bid. As I understand that, those 3 bids will then come back to the city council, and then another public hearing will be held to determine what is the best bid. And at the same time, at that time, Mr. Kolobakin would receive notice of that hearing. He could come and appear and weigh in on what bid he finds to be the most cost-effective bid. And at that time, the city can also make a decision on whether or not to move forward for demolition of the property. But you do have an order from First District Health Unit directing the city of Minot to perform the 3 actions listed in the letter: demolish structures, remove debris, and fill in any basements. So there is an order from First District Health to do that activity.
And that's in accordance with state statute. That's where it's.
And so if I could continue then, in the meantime, so if we initiate that process tonight, as you said, it likely would come back before us because we would have to accept a bid,
Yes.
correct? And so if in the meantime there is, I guess I could only deem it as significant progress towards what would be required by First District Health, could that be relooked at by them to stem that direction?
Yeah, I believe at any time, Mr. Kolobakin could get in touch with city staff and First District Health Unit and ask them to come and take a look at that property and re-examine their decision. I'd encourage him to do so.
And if I can continue, I think, you know, because for me, all of this would have been great 3 years ago after the first notice, right? I think that's the key to this whole thing, and that's why I'm urging you with those other properties as well, if there are others, that the same thing happened there, that the communications start right away. You know, that's one thing I had in the property management world, whether it was tenants or owners. As long as there was communication, we could do a lot. We could work together a lot, but there had to be communication. And so, you know, I guess with that in mind, that we are only taking that first step to get the bids, for me, I do feel confident that this is the right direction. I think we've definitely got to send a message that this is serious and it will happen if things are not changed quickly. Thanks.
Did you have something, Paul?
I'll agree with what Mike said, and I think if there is significant progress and/or, you know, remedying this property, I don't know, your financial state, it might be best to cash out. It might be best to find a buyer who's willing to rehabilitate the property, that can pay cash and put this on their portfolio sooner rather than later. So I would, if I were you, I would exhaust all options. Otherwise, I agree with Mike. Our hands are tied, and we have to do what's best for the community and for those neighborhoods.
Any other comments? Steph?
Just to clarify the motion, as I'm recalling hearing it, was it to move to demolish the property or was it to adopt the staff recommendation?
Well, I think I said it to move forward with demolishing, but I think we would want it to be to accept the staff recommendation.
Okay.
So if I can modify that
Okay with that, is there any objection to go with the staff recommendation? Seeing no objection, that's what we'll move forward with for the original motion. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? I've seen this and I agree with you, Rob. 3 years is a long time. And, you know, if there's one thing that I've been hearing from concerned residents is more responsible property ownership in this town. And I've talked to a number of those residents that are neighboring that property, and they're concerned with who they see out there and the activity they have going on there at all hours and all times of the day. And it, to me, it just falls back on 3 years. 3 years. And, you know, we have to send a message. I think we move forward with demolition on this and the next one. There's a lot of what ifs. Yes, I'm applying for federal loans. Well, what if you don't get them? I think this is just delaying the process by not, you know, yes, go for it. But delaying the process really is affecting those neighborhoods. And when we're sitting up here, we have to make those decisions that are best for all of Minot. That are best for all of Minot. And I think moving forward with demolition on this is the best decision for all of Minot. That's where I stand. Any other comments? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please initiate the vote.
Alderman Fuller, did you not get anything?
I did not get anything.
That was my only one. Okay. Blessum.
Yes.
Fuller.
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Pittner.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Moving on to item 6.3, public hearing demolition of dangerous building located at 101 and 103 8th Avenue Southeast. Now is an opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of or against the recommended action.
The address for 101 and 103, it's actually the same building. They have two different addresses. One's above and below, just so you know. But I was a victim of arson there, and rampant homelessness, vandalism, and non-payment. The firemen again came through for me. I asked for officially to the firemen to have the city condemn it so we could board it up and get people out of there, which is what they did. And now that it is empty, I can do something with it. I appreciate their help. They did a fantastic job. That was actually by request of my own self, just for to getting them out of there. And that ultimately happened. It shouldn't come to that, of course, but hard.
Thank you.
I guess what I would ask for officially from the city is to have, maybe a certain determined amount of time that if it was to meet the criteria of the first district or some other third party, that if it was in compliance, that it should be able to remain standing. I've rehabilitated all these houses from much worse condition, I think, from when I got them, pretty much. Went through floods. I can handle it. It's just that I need the people out of there and people to kind of do what they say they're going to do. And I've made I've learned the hard way quite a bit. Lost. And some of that is my fault. Do business with, like the state, for example, that was a terrible deal for me. Probably $100,000 mistake. But I'm learning. I've been through worse. But I do apologize for the condition and what people did to me. For my own reaction, I would just ask simply for a certain amount of time to, determined by your city panel to be in compliance. And I think that's about it, really.
Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, just a question for staff. What is the timeline on putting out for bids, receiving bids, getting back in front of council?
About 30 days is what I'm getting from city staff. This is what they're kind of looking at for compiling the specs, putting that out to bid, and then bringing it back to the council for its consideration.
And I guess that's what we got, 30 days. We got 30 days before it comes back in front of this body.
To be clear, though, if they were in compliance with the state first district health, is that the only criteria? To not have them demolished?
I'll let Steph.
And so, Mayor, Mr. Kohlerbach, and Alderman Pittner, there's a couple things that are at play here. First is First District Health Unit's health code and their health regulations, and the other is the city's building ordinances, and you need to come into compliance with both. With this order being before us tonight, this is meant that some extreme circumstances have presented themselves to city staff in order for them to make this specific recommendation to actually demolish the structures. They're always going to take the least invasive needs necessary. So that's why a lot of these buildings have just been boarded up for this amount of time. And they've now found that it's reached a point to where it poses a health and safety condition even in that state, which is why they're recommending them be demolished. So if you don't have present and current contact information with city staff, Mr. Tillema, who just came up today, I'd highly recommend that you give your contact information to Mr. Tillema and be prepared to answer his phone calls when he calls. And I recommend the same with First District Health Unit 2. If you're going to be making attempts to remediate this, you need to stay in really close contact with them and make sure that they can get in touch with you.
Yeah. I also got my email hacked or whatever, which is another dumb story, but there's been issues with that too, where I can't even reliably get email out, even to the state level. It's something that the servers that got breached at a local business, they sent me a letter, they're gonna pay for, credit protection or whatever, but, that has been usually, you know, kinda like the way to do business mostly, and, you know, and there's times I couldn't even really correspond with the state. That's been remedied, so.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Kolbakken? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now's an opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of or against the proposed demolition. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Paul?
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing and move forward with the recommendation from staff.
Who's that? Mike? Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Mike?
Okay, so for the city attorney, on this one, this is the one where we have the contract for deeds. So I assume that there's a process in place where both, you know, I understand Mr. Kolbakken's talking about a lot of different circumstances there. I don't know how we rectify those or how we work through them, but in general terms, if there's a contract valid on a building or on a property, both parties would have to be a part of that because presumably you've got equity in both sides of the equation right now.
Yes, yes, that's correct. You'd notice everyone who has an interest in that party. So a contract for deed would, like if you see the First District Health Unit notice, it lists the deed holder of the property and then it indicates that it's contracted to Mr. Kolbakken. So the letter should have gone to both is my understanding. I can't verify the mailing component of it, but we may have some staff here that could do that.
Go ahead, Luke.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council. I don't know, I can't speak for First District Health's order, but the order that I sent in response to that was sent to both McLean, Kolbakken, and the deed holder. We'd received the order to the deed holder back unsigned. So they still have no idea, I guess, in theory, but they were attempted to be notified, which is all we can do by state law.
So, and I guess back to Steph. So it sounds like we don't. By Mr. Kolbakken's testimony, they may not be living. I mean, are there steps that we need to take with the county to understand the actual ownership of the property and before we would move forward with this? I mean, maybe we can move forward with the steps we're contemplating tonight and use that time to try to do that legwork. I guess my other question, and maybe this is a bit for Harold as well, is that our job? Is it the city's job to determine that ownership and before we knock a structure down and make sure that we've got the right people notified and that we have the right ownership on the property?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, I believe that the response that Mr. Tillema just gave you is, and the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong here, we are obligated to notify the owners as is recorded by the county records, which we did. And by having that returned non-signed certified letter, that is all the documentation to prove that we followed state law and attempted to make notification. And I don't see that impeding us moving forward with this process at this time, but the city attorney can correct me if I'm incorrect in that, but that's how it's been handled in all the other states and communities I've worked. Steph?
And Mayor, Alderman Blessum, as far as I can tell from the record that's presented to us, it appears as though the minimum requirements have been met. That's not to say that the council couldn't direct us that you want us to go beyond that and to do some more due diligence, depending upon how the council wants to proceed on that.
If I can continue, I guess what I feel like is the more likely scenario, based on what Mr. Kolbakken is saying, is that it's simply all recorded wrong. Like they missed a change. Either the contract was completed and was never closed out, or whatever those steps are. I don't know that side of things very well. But if nothing else, a simple phone call over to the county to say, hey, we have this before us. Do they have an interest in getting this cleaned up on their end? If we believe there's a discrepancy.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I haven't worked, well, that's not true. I did work as an intern for a county government at the beginning of my career. But it is, I'm not going to say it's not possible that an error like that occurs, but it'd be extremely rare because of all the processes and the checks and balances and the due diligence they do to record that information. So I can have staff reach out to the county just to verify that they believe their records are accurate. But I don't know that I've ever come across a point where those records were incorrect.
Yeah. So if I may, Mr. Mayor, actually, that maybe gives me more pause. Because now that in my head, we've got another set of owners, and it could be their kids, it could be somebody that has an interest in this property, and they don't know. And I mean, I understand we've met the law. I get that part. I understand we don't have maybe a legal issue there. But, you know, as someone who right now is in the middle of a contract for deed to purchase a property, I would definitely want to know if it was about to be, you know, I was about to be demolished. And so I realize we've done what we've needed to under the law, but I do think that's a good idea for us to at least make that contact with the county. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please initiate the vote.
Did you get one?
No, I did it.
Did you save?
Like I did it. I moved on. Sorry. I did it. Shoot.
Oh, nope, now we did it. And it's up
There we go.
Motion passed.
Oh, sorry. Okay, moving on to action item 7 on the agenda. Consent items. We have 17 items on our consent agenda this evening. We've been asked to pull 3 items, 7.7, 7.11, and 7.14 have been asked to be pulled. Are there any others? Any others to be pulled? Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mike.
I move that we approve the remaining items.
Second.
We have a motion by Mike, second by Paul. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please initiate the vote.
You have to give me a second. It's
Okay.
in the spinning wheel.
I'm
of
talking too fast.
Not even letting me move it. It's really the internet. I mean, we can go back to the old way.
Can we move on?
It's not moving, but we can move on. I can call roll.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. And I've asked for discussion. Please call the roll.
Blessam?
Yes.
Fuller?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Samuelson?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, do we have them all?
We're good.
Okay. Moving on to the items that were asked to be pulled, 7.7. Approval of accounts receivable write-offs. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I would
Yes.
move that we approve the item.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. Mike, you asked to have this pulled, so
Yeah,
I'll
and-
turn it over to you.
Thank you. So this was the first time that we've gone through this process that we approved a couple of meetings ago, Dave. So I just thought we'd just have a quick discussion on it. Can you talk us through what's there? It looks like 2 of them are duplicate invoices, and I guess my main question for you was, are those actually write-offs? I realize maybe in the system they are, but they're a duplicate item, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessing, you are correct. This is, all 3 of these actually are kind of more housekeeping items. However, we use the same process to write off those invoices as we would if something was not collectible. 2 of these were accident claims where we have to accumulate those costs over a period of time. At least one of them was was originally billed out to the individual who was in the accident. We ended up settling with the insurance company, so we had to remove the invoice that was used to accumulate those costs. So all three of these are examples of housekeeping type items and not what we would think of as a write-off of something uncollectible.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just continue. So I think that makes sense, and just for the public's recollection, anything over 2,500 will come through consent, just like this item did. We pulled it today. Dave, is there something in the reason that we should watch for where it truly was a decision? Where, hey, you know what, whether it's uncollectible or whatever we think is an actual write-off in my mind, what would we look for in that reason?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, I think we would have to, and we're limited on how many characters we have in that description, but we could come up with something that would tip our hat of it being an actual write-off.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Lakefield? Thanks, Dave. Any further discussion on item 7.7? Seeing none, please initiate the vote. I did.
Alderman Samuelson, did you get one? One never came to you? Okay. Blessum?
Yes.
Fuller?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Samuelson? Yes. Motion passed.
Motion passes. Moving on to item 7.11. I was asked to be pulled by Councilman Fuller. What are the wishes of the council?
Mayor, I move we approve the item.
We have a motion by Mark. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Paul. Discussion. Rob?
I asked for this just to be pulled because when you look at the numbers, I mean, we've gotten numbers for years on the flood control, but every time we go out and get a bid, as we saw on this one, the original bids came in 50% over what our engineers had estimated. And now the bid we accepted came in at 25% over what we estimated. So that's about another $7 million, of which roughly 2.4 would be on the citizens as our payback portion. I guess I just wanted to discuss this because we're paying for this out of sales tax revenue. Our sales tax revenues aren't going up. In fact, I believe we've been told they've been going down a little bit over the last few years. So, I mean, should we be concerned about this at all? Is every time we go out and get a bid for something that we were told would cost $28 million, now it's 25% over or 50% over? I mean, we're going to be putting a huge burden on the future generations of Minot, North Dakota, if we keep seeing these price increases over the next 20 years. I mean, again, I think it's something in my mind that isn't feasible that we can continue to eat over these next 20 years. So that was why I wanted to have it pulled, and I wanted to get that out there. I mean, it's big numbers keep coming back over what we estimated. I mean, have we had Ackerman, Jason, have we had Ackerman take a look at redoing the numbers to see with the current inflation and economy how much more it might cost us than they originally said?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Fuller, yeah, I mean, we're looking at all that stuff. You know, that's one of the things that we've brought to the legislature each year is an advanced funding mechanism to fund these sooner so that we can kind of get through this. But yeah, I mean, the Service River Joint Board is as concerned as you are about these prices. That's why we didn't award them back in May. We reached back out to the contractors to find out. We've analyzed all the bid items. You know, some of the issues that were in Minot, North Dakota. We're a little remote from Minneapolis and some of these bigger communities where there's more contractors available. Subcontractors, you know, we all here probably, I think I can probably speak for all of us, we love Minot. We want to be in Minot. A contractor from Minneapolis, their employees don't want to be in Minot. So it's just the dynamics of what's going on in the workforce. There's a massive flood control project going on in Fargo right now with federal dollars involved. That's hogging up some of the contractor resources right now. You know, so like I said, we changed some timelines. We changed some things. We did see a pretty
pretty decent reduction, but yeah, we're still concerned that these big numbers are gonna keep coming in. We're gonna keep working to try to get better bid prices.
So I mean, maybe to you or to some of the other staff, like if we keep seeing these numbers and our sales tax dollars aren't going up, which is how we're paying for this, how are we gonna end up paying for it?
That's definitely a question that works out into the future, that, you know, the half-cent sales tax isn't an endless supply of money, you know, so that's something that we gauge. We're obviously not going to award something that we don't have funding for, you know, so there might come a point where we have to stall flood control for a little while to wait until we pay something else off, so we can take something else on. It's definitely a puzzle going forward, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just quickly, Jason, when we get an engineer's estimate, what's the time frame between that? Is that right before the bid? Or is that,
Yeah.
or is that looking back a couple years?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman, bless them, yeah. They'll prepare it right before the bid, but it's based on, you know, previous bids that we've had, and then we'll usually escalate. You know, there's some construction indexes that they'll look at and try to escalate, and that's kind of what gives them their estimate just before we go out for bid.
And just to continue, so my point really is, this isn't all 2012 estimates. These are right before the project is starting up for each phase.
That is correct, yeah.
Harold.
Mr. Mayor, and perhaps in response to Alderman Fuller as well, one thing to remember here is this is done in partnership with the state. And so as part of our participation, we have to meet our obligation for that 35% match. You are correct that these increases are concerning. However, that being said, these aren't uncommon. We're seeing these consistently. And even though staff is not excited about increases and spending this money faster, at the end, this project is, of all the projects that we're doing across the community, this is the one that serves to protect the most. I mean, we can cut back on scope, but all that's going to do is reduce your floodplain map, which means that more of our citizens are going to have to pay for flood insurance. That's going to be extremely expensive for them and unsustainable and untenable. So this is a commitment, and this is a long-term commitment. And again, I agree with Mr. Sorensen. This is why we have been working with the legislature and encouraging them to have a more accelerated, funded process that we can get this done faster and hopefully minimize some of these pressures and these issues. As far as alternatives going forward, paying for it, well, one, I would slightly disagree with the statement that our sales tax have decreased. They have flattened, but I don't know that we've seen a decrease, at least not in the time that I've been here. If anything, over the last few years, the sales tax revenues have come in significantly higher than we as staff projected and built the budget off of, which has contributed to some of our reserves and those kinds of things. So at the worst case scenario, Minot has been fairly stable in sales tax on an annual basis. We've had months that have not come in as high as we hoped or expected, but then another month would come in even higher than we've ever seen in the last 20 years. So, but that being said, other alternatives would be, is one, going in the legislative session this year, we could potentially ask the state government for more funding towards these projects because of the inflation that we're seeing, and they're seeing these on state projects of their own across the state as well. So it's an issue that they're already discussing and concerned about, just like you are, rightfully so. The other alternative would be, we do receive Hub City funding, and as long as that continues to come in at the rate that is already approved and the legislature doesn't change that mechanism in future legislative sessions, that is funding that can be diverted to this as well. So but those are going to come with tough decisions in the future that you're correct. We need to be mindful of those coming forward. But at the end of the day, this is a project that is protecting many of our citizens, and scaling it back has some significant and dire consequences to the citizens of our community.
Any other questions for Jason? Scott?
Not for Jason.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Go ahead, Scott.
I was just gonna, I get where everybody's coming from, and I believe Rob pulled this item just kind of so that we're aware of it. And, you know, in the articles and stuff that I've looked at, it may be that it's delayed some. You know, if we expect to do it in 7 to 10 years, maybe it's gonna be a little longer than that. you know, if it comes to that. So I think that's more why I would guess that Rob pulled the item, is kind of so that everybody's aware of it. And yeah, it's not fun.
Mr. Mayor, just one other thing to add quickly. We had a discussion earlier this week on the flood control program and had Mr. Ackerman and Jason and team. You know, one of the things I was struck by was that, it'd be great to go to the legislature, you know, let's get 300 million flowing through from the state. We can't get contractors here to do the work that fast. That's the issue that we've got. You know, we'd all love to get it moving and get ahead of inflation on it, but we are just stuck in the worst cycle of inflationary issues and lack of construction resources to make it happen. And so it's extremely concerning. I don't see a way out. I mean, I've come to start looking at flood as something that my kids and grandkids get to deal with. It'll be here the rest of my life.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please initiate the vote.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Ross. Yes. Samuelson,
Yes.
Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller.
Yes.
Motion passes. Moving on to consent item 7.14, use of a city employees' online auction services for the surplus vehicles auction online. This was asked to be pulled by, I believe, Mr. Councilman Blessam. What are the wishes of the council? Mark?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval of the item.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Mike?
Mr. Mayor, the main reason I wanted this on hold is just to make sure that we have visibility to an item where a city employee's business is being used to perform services for the city. I think it's important that the public understand when that happens. It's important that all of us understand when that happens and that what we're voting on when we do that. You know, I assume this is a unique case where this makes sense, that this is the right direction, and I see that in the discussion on it. But I think it's important for everybody to know whenever we do this.
Any further discussion? Harold?
Just along the same lines, this is typically not something, this would be an administrative matter that staff would take care of, and to err on the side of transparency and clarity, we also put it on the agenda. So I agree, and staff has had significant conversation about this, and, but we felt this was the best way forward with the selling of these properties at this time.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please initiate the vote. I did, and I voted.
Motion passed.
Okay, moving on to action items. Item 8.1, driveway appeal and request for special permit, 1109 Hiawatha Street Southeast. What are the wishes of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve it. I don't know if Mr. Ellingson is going to come up and speak.
Well, we'll get a motion in a second, then we'll open for discussion.
I'll second.
Scott, seconds. Discussion.
Can we hear from the
Yeah,
applicant?
yep.
Mr. Mayor and Councilman, I am back. I had previously come in here to extend my driveway apron to make up a backup zone for my camper to park alongside my house. I am exceeding the limits of what a driveway is, but considering I maintain the property, I pay a significant amount of property tax, and I do appreciate the discussion on some of the things tonight to save some of those property taxes for us. I'm just looking to do something and do it in an aesthetically pleasing way. I've got a contractor lined up as soon as I get green lighted and I can proceed with the work on my end. It's a simple request.
there any questions? Rob?
Mr. Ellingson, if you had your choice between what you're proposing this time and what you're proposing last time, which way would you rather have it, to be honest?
I would prefer the first request.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? Rob?
So after this came to city council a month and a half ago or whatever it was, and we started talking about it, I went out and started looking at different things around the city to see how different what Mr. Ellingson was proposing was to what's out there already. And just driving through over in southeast Minot where I live, I found 7 properties that have the driveway longer than what he is proposing to put in. I asked some of the city employees, like in this property, it was built 2 years ago. I said, did this person get a variance? Did they bring this to the city? It was never brought to us, never asked about, and it was just happened. Now, I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble, but what I'm asking is, we have a citizen here who comes to us to do it the right way, and we tell him no, and we have individuals that don't do it the right way, and we don't do anything about it. How is that fair of us as a city council? I mean, and again, I don't need an answer, I'm just simply stating. These properties exist out there. You have double wide townhomes that have 3-car garages with driveways over 70 feet long because it's all one giant piece. So for a citizen of Minot who wants to put in a second driveway, which seems to be pretty common in the city, I don't have any issue with it. So I would go ahead and make the motion to approve his request the first way he asked us to do it, so he could just put in a regular driveway rather than doing it what he's proposing on this revisit.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor in a second. Unless that's an amendment, or that would have to be a whole new motion. So we'll have to vote on the original motion.
Okay.
And depending on which way it goes, then there could be, I mean, if the original motion passes, then
Yeah.
then it's taken care of.
Okay.
So, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please.
Just to reiterate, is
Go
the
ahead.
current motion to approve the special permit for Hiawatha and allow the driveway width to a maximum of 51 feet?
Yeah, that's the original motion.
The motion passes with a 5-2 vote.
Moving on to item 8.2, storm sewer district.
Mayor,
Yes,
just a
go
point
ahead.
of order quick. So did we, I don't think it displayed, did it, or did I miss it?
Yeah,
I think it's important that
think
people
she's
understand
pulling it
how
up.
people are voting, so.
Yep.
Okay.
5-2 vote.
Yeah, I agree. That hasn't displayed on this one immediately, and on the immediately preceding vote, I didn't see it display immediately. It may have displayed on maybe the YouTube stream, but we're not seeing it in the chambers, so
I
I'm not
think
sure.
the problem we're having is an internet issue maybe, because I'm having a slow time on mine. So I did see that she had posted it after the last vote. It just came up.
So if we could, Mr. Mayor, if we could just pause until we verify that
Yep.
they're up, because we want to see
It's
the
a
votes.
good point. Point well taken. Thank you. We saw the results, so now we can move on. Item 8.2, Storm Sewer District 124, Contract Amendment and Project Update. What are the wishes of the council? Oh, it's just an update. Oh, no, never mind.
There is an item too, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we need a motion in a second.
Move approval.
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion by Paul. You're okay with the second? Okay. Lance?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. With me tonight, I have Mr. Aaron Fornshell from Ackerman Asphalt. He's our project manager on this project here for us for Storm Sewer District 124. So we have Two things. One, we have a contract amendment that's in front of you, and two, we wanted to provide you an update with where we're at on the project. It's been a while since we had checked in on this one, and we're kind of at the point now where we're getting to the point where we're going to need council to take some action on where we need to go. So we're going to give you an update and then see if you have any questions after that. So I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As discussed, I'm with Ackerman Asphalt Engineering. Name's Aaron Fornshell. I'll do a quick review of what we have for Storm Sewer District 124. This project dates back to probably, we can first identify in about 1998 in the Polaris Park area. The current form that we have today is, comes back to about the 2015 Stormwater Management Plan. As you can see, it kind of follows the priority list of these other storm sewer districts that have been completed in the recent years, starting with Storm Sewer District 117 all the way through Storm Sewer District 123. Ackerman Asphalt's been involved with the last two, being Storm Sewer District 122 in the 18th Avenue area, kind of around the Edison School, and then also with Storm Sewer District 123, which would be in the 10th Street, kind of just east of Dakota Square. The need for this project continues. There's extended and frequent flooding along the west side of the US 83 ditch between 27th Avenue and 30th Avenue Northwest. The flooding results in some long-term flooding in between the highway and the frontage road. Some of these photos, the ones in the middle here on this slide, they're from last May. It resulted in flooding in the ditch for, an extended period greater than 5 hours. This happened again in about 2013 and again in 2010. So those are some of the more recent storms we've had. The return period for those storms represent only a 2 to 5 year rainfall intensity. So those are frequently reoccurring. As you can kind of see, there's also some downstream impacts from the flooding where the drainage overtops the roadways at 13th Street Northeast and again at 30th Avenue Northeast near Mustang Trail, which would be on the south side of the Heydrich Home subdivision. Those flows are causing erosion in the ditch. They're impacting private property and some access to some farmlands there. And again, these kind of continue to be issues even since we've been looking at this over the last 10 years or so. The drainage area for the Storm Sewer District is kind of one of the larger ones that the City of Minot's dealt with. There's some sub-districts with it. The largest one would be the northwest area sub-basin. It's kind of highlighted in the green outline there, and it extends all the way from Broadway basically back over to the 83 bypass. Another portion of this would be in the Stonebridge Farms area that encompasses about 237 acres, and then there's also about 90 acres downstream. So in total, the contributing area to the Storm Sewer District is over 1,600 acres. All of this drains into the Livingston Coulee, which is shown on the right-hand side of this graphic here in the blue, and then eventually that all ends up in the Souris River where it outlets kind of near the City of Minot's Public Works building. So as we kind of move forward with the design of this project, some of the standards that we're basing this on would be obviously the City of Minot Stormwater Management Plan. We've used XP Swim modeling program. It's a 2D modeling program that models the hydraulic or kind of the rainfall and the hydrologic, which would be the rainfall portion, and the hydraulic, which would be your storm sewer and drainage routes. That's been the City of Minot's and Souris River Joint Board's interior drainage program of choice lately. We've used data from a few different sources, the NRCS, USGS, and the NOAA for kind of plug that into the modeling to get some of our results. We've also used some actual storm data and kind of verified our model and how it matches up with some of those results we've gotten. They were pretty good in concurrence. Some of the culvert sizing that we're looking at, most of that's based on the North Dakota Administrative Code, and then some DOT guidelines. Due to the proximity of this project to the airport, we're also following some FAA circulars that have been recently published that offers guidelines for mitigating wildlife hazards near airports that would be related to a stormwater management pond and where water would be detained. They also kind of impacts on how we would deal with some wetlands that the project has in the project area. A few of the alternatives that we've looked at, there's been several, but it kind of boiled down to two likely situations. The first one would be a 42-inch storm sewer that would be placed under Broadway, kind of near the 2800 block. This would be routed through the existing drainage channel that's on this airport's property, and then it would enter the existing 48-inch storm sewer that kind of runs through the northern portion of the airport. The other option that we've been looking at would be we could place a 30-inch pipeline beneath Broadway and tie into that existing storm sewer, kind of bypassing that existing drainage channel. Our recommended alternative would be to use the 30-inch. It provides better conveyance. The timing of that stormwater conveyance works out much better, and there's limits impacts to the airport. Being a smaller pipe, it's also cheaper construction costs. Along with the conveyance alternatives, we also identified several storage alternatives to analyze. There's several ponds in northwest Minot that we looked at to either try to increase the capacity or change the outlet structures. None of those really proved effective. There's cost benefits that did not play out to be able to either increase that volume or try to route that water in there sooner. After we kind of analyzed all of those, it was suggested that we route the stormwater through a detention facility that's in the Stonebridge Farms subdivision. When we did the analysis, we looked at expanding that existing pond that's there to increase the storage, then route that stormwater that's along the Broadway frontage road, route that through the airport and into that pond. And then we could control those downstream flows and release that in a more convenient manner. So kind of a summary of what we have for proposed improvements to date. Along Broadway, we'd like to place a new 30-inch conduit under there, tie that into the existing 48-inch storm sewer that's to the airport, take advantage of some excess capacity that's in that line. Where that 48-inch currently outlets, there's a large amount of erosion along 30th Avenue. We would basically extend that existing storm sewer, route it into the pond. We would eliminate any of that erosion potential. We would expand this Stonebridge Farms pond. We'd change the outlet structure to match kind of our current flows, and then replace some downstream culverts that are severely undersized. Some of those existing ones are about 18-inch, and we'd look to replace them with either double 48s or triple 42-inch pipe. So some pretty significant increases there. So our modeling efforts kind of show that these proposed improvements would in fact eliminate that flooding. There's some water surface elevation graphics here. There's a line placed on there for what would basically be the edge of roadway for US Highway 83. And as you can see, the existing graphics show that in a 25, 50, and 100-year storm, there's significant ponding on 83 itself, and that ponding lasts for approximately almost 2 days. With the proposed improvements we have, not only do we lower that water surface that would be on the Highway 83, that southbound lane, but we also significantly shorten that duration of flooding to a matter of hours versus days. So that would be just the improvements from the conveyance standpoint. From the proposed improvements that we have for the additional capacity, we kind of use the point of analysis that's downstream of where some of these drainages come in right before they enter Livingston Coulee. Some of these graphics here kind of show that we significantly decrease that downstream flow by holding that water in that expanded stormwater detention pond that would be in Stonebridge Farms subdivision. Kind of one of the issues that we have or dealt with was we can't over detain because those ponds being so close to the airport, they want those drained down within a 48-hour time period. So there's kind of a balancing act between how much we can detain and how much we have to push downstream immediately. So, I guess the takeaway from this would be that expanded capacity in that storage pond does work. It will reduce erosion, reduce the likelihood of any of those roadways downstream overtopping in a flood event, and reduce the effect that it has to private property along that drainage route, and then access to some of that ag land on the south side of 30th. So the current estimate that we have for the proposed improvements, construction costs are about $2.4 million. When you separate that out, there's about 1.25 that's dedicated for storm sewer piping and the extension of that storm sewer along 30th Avenue. There's about $450,000 that would be for earthwork for digging out that existing pond, and then the balance of that would be demo work, erosion control, some of your miscellaneous work, seeding, some aggregates, some roadway rebuilds. So along with that, the engineering fees for the project, currently the engineering contract for that is about $232,000. There's a proposed amendment included later that would take that total up to $424,000. Kind of the reasoning for some of that amendment would be the initial construction costs for this project were based on the 2015 stormwater management plan, where there was about $748,000 of construction budget for that. And then with the current plan budget of about $2.5 million for the proposed improvements, simply follows City of Minot's consultant scale to increase that engineering amount. Do you want to talk about the storm sewer district or this assessment district?
So like many of our projects, when we look at storm sewer, we do this by special assessment. So essentially, we take the cost that we have for the project and we divide in half. Half is special assessed and half is paid by the Storm Sewer Utilities Storm Sewer Development Fund. So when you get your utility bill every month, there's a storm sewer fee that's associated with that. And a portion of that goes to storm sewer maintenance, and a portion of that fee goes to pay for projects such as this. So you can see in this project, it's a huge watershed. It's over 1,600 acres. And it encompasses a very large portion of North Minot by the map. In fact, we even cross over into west of the bypass. It's so large. If you look at our proposed budget, the way that this is breaking down, Aaron kind of walked through the construction costs of about $2.4 million. Then we have some soft costs that we put on there, like contingency, our engineering, our city admin and finance costs. We budget for those at 8% and 6% respectively. Typically, we don't charge those out at those full percentages. We charge out our actual costs when we go to sell bonds and those sort of things. But for the purposes of budgeting for the project, when you total up all these soft costs and our estimated construction costs, we're at about $3.66 million. You divide that in half. Half goes special, half goes to storm sewer development. And then what we're doing on this project is we're looking at how would we break out those funds and distribute those special assessments. So right now, we're preliminary in that process, but the way that we're looking at this is the majority of that benefit would be distributed to that larger area of assessment, the northwest area, because that's where the majority of the water is coming from. About 81% of the drainage area is basically for those improvements. So only a small portion is for the Stonebridge Farms area, if you will. So the way that we're looking at this, at least preliminarily, is most of that assessment would go towards the folks that are essentially on the west side of Broadway. Some facts and figures about how this assessment district looks at this time. That northwest Minot watershed, like I was talking about, it's almost 1,300 acres. There's a little over 1,400 parcels in that portion of the district. About 75 of those are outside city limits. So what that means is the city of Minot would have to pay the assessments on those parcels that are outside of the city limits, and we hold those in abeyance. So until those parcels would annex in, we would pay those special assessments. And then as they annex in, there's a provision in state law that allows us to create a special assessment district that's non-protestable, and then we would basically start an assessment on that parcel for their assessed portion. So it'd be Storm Sewer District 124A, and maybe it's a $200 assessment for parcel X as they would annex into the city, as an example. And we'd have to do that for all the assessments that are held in abeyance. Likewise, on the Stonebridge watershed section, there's about 237 acres, 394 parcels. There's only one that's outside the city, and that's the large parcel right now that's just on the east side of the Stonebridge Farms development. Just some of the estimated assessments, if all this carries through and we would actually distribute those assessments as planned. We have assessments ranging anywhere from $18 all the way up to almost $100,000. And on the Stonebridge section, assessments ranging from $120 up to about $20,000. So kind of a wide range of assessments at this point. Again, this is somewhat preliminary at this point, but just a snapshot of what that might look like. Aaron, if you want to finish it up.
So kind of the next steps that we're looking at for the project would be to gain concurrence for the project itself, make sure that's the route that we want to move forward with. Then we'd move into some of the administrative tasks with the special assessment district, set the assessment district boundaries, set up the actual assessments and public hearings and such. On the engineering side, we'd be looking to finalize plans. They're pretty much complete, so there'd just be some minimal effort there to finalize that stuff. We would continue to pursue the land acquisition with the Stonebridge Farms pond, and then some easements along the route along 30th Avenue also. So there'd be two easements that we'd be looking for through there. Spoke with both of those property owners, and they were receptive to the project. So and then we'd also be looking to close out the permitting process to gain approvals from the Corps and DOT, and then once all that's complete, then we'd be looking to bid the project and award it, and hopefully have our construction started and wrapped up in 2025. That's what I have.
Discussion or questions? Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Aaron, we talked about moving a lot of water through this project. Is there risk to downstream? Where does this water end up? I know it goes into Livingston Coulee. Is there any threats of flooding downstream by diverting this much water that fast?
No, there wouldn't be, because we'd be detaining it in that expanded pond, so we'd actually be lowering the flows downstream.
Okay.
Mike?
So I got a couple, but just to continue on that first, Aaron. So that flows all the way down to near Public Works, the whole property we've been talking about with Kemper. So
Correct.
Does that downsize our pumping system, or is that already built into what you guys laid out?
I believe with the timing of the designs, it would be taken into account for that pumping system, but we're essentially matching the existing flows, but decreasing them minimally. So it would be accounted for, and the project itself probably wouldn't impact the size of that pump station very much.
So if I can continue, Mr. Mayor, and this might be better answered by Lance, I guess. So I guess my question is, we've got, with the breadth of projects we've got going on everywhere, I mean, we had a lot of money that we're outlaying all over the place. This one, and maybe I missed something along the way, but I certainly understand the idea that we're trying to avoid putting water over North Broadway. I mean, I think we all understand that for sure. I guess my question is, this is not one where we're dealing with infrastructure that's deteriorating. We're really just susceptible to a big rain, is what it comes down to. Is that a good way to put that?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, I would agree with that. I think anytime that your road subgrade is inundated by storm events, it will take some life off your roadway. We know that. My concern over time is if we do keep having these events, we could be at risk when those frontage roads go underwater because they're only one-way access. They could get cut off. So there is some risk there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that would be with a washout, essentially. It's something taking that out and not being passable for a while.
Not so much a washout, but at a certain event, so when you start going above that, we call it a 5-year event, 5-year frequency. Obviously, with you're dealing with statistics, right? So you could have 2 back-to-back, or you could have, 1 every 15 years. Who knows, right? But they could go underwater enough where you wouldn't be able to pass a vehicle through there for several hours. That's the risk that we're trying to really overcome.
Yeah. And so if I can continue, Mr. Mayor. So I think that answered everything I was looking for. And I guess one of the things that I'll just throw out is these are the types of projects that, man, they're great to have. Like, I mean, we would prefer to move forward with these in the environment that we're in, with so many strains on everything we're doing. It starts to get tough. Where do you pick to spend the money is where my mind goes. We're coming to the tail end of NAS. We're, flood is as far as the eye can see, as we've been talking about. Puppy Dog Coulee is actual deteriorating infrastructure that we have to do. That's, every single one of them just gets that much tougher to approve. And so just commentary, I guess. Thanks.
Certainly. And Mr. Mayor and council members, depending on how your discussion goes, I would like to mention that, depending on where Ackerman Asphalt's at in their contract and depending on if you decide to move forward or not with the project, I would like to get them pay they are overextended on their contract at this point. So even if the project doesn't move forward, it'd be good to try to get that bill settled with them and at least get that to a point where we can get the plan sets basically ready to go at some point if we want to move forward with that project and have it shelf ready. I think that'd be wise for us.
Can I continue, Mr. Mayor? So, okay, that opens a separate question for me, which is I thought what part of this was tonight. So I guess I understand the partnership that we've got with Ackerman. I appreciate that very much because they do a lot of great work for us in many, many areas. But I do get concerned when we hear that they've overextended the contract without approval for any funding. Are we back paying work that's already complete without a contract?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, at this point, they have completed work and not billed us for it. So it's work that has gone on past scope, and they have not billed it for us or billed that work to us.
So that starts to get tough because I don't like not paying our bills if we've got them. I think that's a core tenet that we have to have as a city government. At the same time, we have to have the bills to pay them. If this approval is what's required, so is there another option that's here then to pay the bills that are there? If we decided we're not doing this project for 3 years, is there an option that would be here to pay what we owe them?
I think at this point, what council could do if the project doesn't move forward, there could be recommendation to have Ackerman submit, basically their billings to this point, and the city can entertain that amount and pay that off and be done with it if they wanted to. Basically, what's happened is they have worked outside of their contract value. And now we're to the point where I don't have a way to pay them. And that probably should have been brought to our attention sooner. And so now we're stuck.
Rob?
Lance, I have a couple questions. One, you said we looked at this originally back in 2015 when it was about $780,000. And now we are 9 years later where it's about 3 times that. Roughly. Why is now the right time to do it all? I mean, if we looked, we've waited 9 years and costs have tripled. Why is now the right time to do it?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller, there's been several projects in front of this. So when we did the master plan back in 2015, and there's actually a slide. Let's go back and talk about that. So this is a slide from the actual report from 2015. So you'll kind of see the different projects that we've done here, and basically what's happened, and just give you a little background on how this used to work, is the city of Minot used to have a storm sewer ad hoc committee. Alderman Janser probably remembers this. I think he used to be a member of it. And basically, staff would come up with these different projects that would be in these reports, and then we'd rank them in priority order. And they'd be ranked basically like how much property damage occurs on these, what's the severity of flooding, and on and on and on. And then we'd present that to the city council, and they'd say, okay, here's the order that staff, you're gonna go build these projects. And that's essentially what's happened on these is they were ranked, and staff would go forward, and we'd program these into the capital improvement plan, and about every 2.5 years, we'd get a project done. So Polaris Park, even though it's in the project or in the report in 2015, it's just taken to this point now where we've been able to build it.
Okay.
That's basically what it is. So we've had inflation to deal with, right? The project's taken on a couple different challenges. We've had to deal with a lot of growth that's happened in that watershed since 2015, so that's had to been accounted for. We've had to find the right combination of all these different detention ponds and alternatives up in that area. It's a huge watershed. So that took us some time to try to figure out what combinations would work to make all this stuff happen. So to do all that work, that added to the construction cost.
Mr. Mayor, can I continue? So, and then just one other quick question off of what Councilman Blessam was asking. So did Ackerman Esvold do the extra work at the city's urging without the contract in place, or did they do it of their own volition, and now we just have to kind of pay the piper?
So, we're working together on these projects,
Okay.
right? And typically what ends up happening is we would come together at some point and say, okay, the project is changing, we're running into scope issues, like, okay, now the results are saying we need to expand a pond, which now means we're gonna need to go acquire right-of-way. Well, we didn't have right-of-way in our scope, because we didn't think we were gonna have to acquire right-of-way. We got into some extra permitting because of some wetland issues. We're having to identify additional alternatives because of some of the watershed challenges we're having. Typically, that comes to us as city staff, we review it, and then we bring that to council, like we've done other times when there's contract issues. I think part of the issue here was there was some delay in those things coming to us, and then some delay in when this report is going to come to council, just because of the complexities that we were dealing with this, and then the timelines on when we were going to bring this to you, because of some of the delays we were working on with the Corps of Engineers, and then just some of the issues with the right-of-way. We didn't know exactly when that should come in front of you. But I think, in truth, we probably should have had this come to the city a little bit earlier.
Thank you.
Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This might be for Lance or Aaron. So Aaron, Lance, our current bill is somewhere between 232,000 and 424,000. Any idea where we're at as far as percentage completed of the project design? Are we at 90%? Are we, any idea where we're at?
The design's essentially finished.
Okay.
Harold?
Just to add some staff response back to Alderman Fuller's question, and I'm going to tie this back to the conversation we had earlier with regards to the flood control and the inflation issues and those kinds of things. And Alderman Fuller asked the question, several years ago, this was a $700,000, less than $800,000 project, and now it's tripled. This is some of the risks that we take in slowing down these projects, right? That was a suggestion by Alderman Samuelson with regards to approach to flood control. This is the risk we take when we do that, right? I would argue that the cheapest time to build anything was yesterday, and the most expensive time to build it is tomorrow, right? And this is a genuine question to Alderman Fuller. You were in the baking industry for a long time. When's the last time you saw construction costs go down? In my 15-year career, I can't think of a time that it has gone down. But these are the risks that we take, and I agree with a lot of the perspective of the council, particularly the new council members, that ultimately we can only do what we can afford. But this is the role, and this is what makes this position up here on the dais difficult, is we're trying to meet community needs and have foresight, but at the end of the day, we're limited to what resources we have, and we try to invest those the best we can to benefit our community and our citizens and our taxpayers the best that we can. But every time we delay these things, in my experience, it only gets more expensive. Some of the main exception to that could be technology. Maybe TVs get cheaper, but even then they don't get cheaper. They just get more capacity and more higher definition and those kinds of things. But, some of the computers have gone down and those kinds of things. But typically speaking, most things don't go down in cost significantly. And again, I know everyone on the dais understands that, but I wanted to connect these two principles, that these are the challenges that we have is when we keep delaying these investments.
Mike?
Thanks. So Harold, just to follow up on that, so this project, is it in the 25 budget?
It's actually slated right now in the 24 budget. But because of some of the permitting issues that we're having, we're gonna have to push it to 25.
Okay. And so, and then I assume that's what this, part of this approval is the change to the payment for Ackerman. And so is that a budget amendment that we have to do for that?
Yes, what is in front of you tonight is a contract amendment. And then we'll do just like we did with the flood control project. You know, specs will be made, it'll be put out for bid. We'll have an engineer's estimate on what that'll be. We'll see how accurate that estimate is when it comes back, and then it'll be a decision of the council at that time whether or not to move forward with the project. The only thing that's in front of the council tonight is the contract amendment to finish out the engineering costs of the final design, and then it would go into preparation for bid and then be bid out. And as our city engineer stated, Mr. Meyer, we're looking at probably 2025. So this would, I'm guessing, would be bid in January, February timeframe when we typically bid our projects to try and get the best costs. But construction wouldn't start until next year.
Correct.
And in addition to this, one of the approaches that we've taken, even with the flood control projects, is due to our issues with contractors and labor, we're extending out the time frame for completing the project to try and keep those costs down. So, but that puts the contractor at risk because they're agreeing at a price in early 2025 for a project that they may not finish until 2026 or 2027.
Scott?
So the engineering is basically done. So that's what we're voting on here tonight, is for the payment basically for Ackerman Municipal.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Samuelson, you're correct. It would basically settle the bill for the engineering, and then that would, the additional funds for the engineering would cover their construction management if the project would proceed. If the project doesn't proceed, then those funds wouldn't be spent because we do hourly contracts. So whatever hours aren't spent, they don't get paid. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mike?
Okay, so just maybe one final point on this. I really do not like where we're sitting right now, paying for work that's already complete, that's not contracted. That's, I mean, I don't know how we face the public saying that, again, whether it's this contractor or any contractor decides what work gets done and then tells us that they should be paid for it. And so I think that has to change, whatever that's going to take to change that going forward, so that we don't face that again, because this is not a decision I intend to have again.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Lance. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing none, please initiate the vote.
You didn't get one? Okay. Pittner?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Samuelson?
No.
Lessem?
Yes.
Fuller?
Yes.
Dancer?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion passes. I am wondering, we've been here for just about 3 hours. Would it be okay without objection? We'll take about a 5-minute recess. Come back at, let's make it, come back at 8:20. We'll be in recess until 8:20.
Decide, do I have to? Be frowned upon?
It is 8:20 and we are back in session. Moving on to item 8.3, the Northwest Area Water Main Replacement Contract Amendment. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the recommendation.
We have a motion by Mark. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Scott. Discussion. Any discussion?
We don't have Rob.
Mike? Yep.
Mr. Mayor, could we get a quick explanation for this? I mean, I can read it. I'm concerned we're in the same spot again. Did we have work that was completed outside of a contract that's now being asked to be paid for?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, so probably a little bit similar. There's some work that was done beyond the original contract period, so we knew that work would be basically withheld from the contractor's contract because he went back to his, so that's in liquidated damages. In this, there's also some work while we're kind of in the heat of construction. We found a storm sewer pipe that needed to be relocated and replaced. So we had the consultant in this case hurry up and design so we could get something constructed. So some of these costs came on kind of in the heat of the moment where we, couldn't pause, bring a contract amendment to council. We needed to we have the contractor there on site and doing work.
Okay, so on these ongoing projects, is there a threshold that you would use, Jason? Is there something that would tell you, oh boy, I better stop here? I mean, is it a dollar amount? Is it, because again, I think it puts a contractor in peril if we're asking them to do that, because who's sitting up here could change and we could suddenly say, look, I'm not paying for something that's outside of the scope. I mean, we could turn on a dime on that. Now, I don't want us to be that, but I get concerned if we're doing that.
Sure. Is there a dollar amount? It's probably just a gut feel on my part, like, whoa, this feels pretty big. We better check in with council. In this case, this is about $76,000 on a almost $4 million project. So in that case, I felt comfortable. But certainly duly noted, Alderman Blessum. I think we can talk to our consultants and make sure we're getting these regular check-ins on our budgets a little more frequently, so we can have these conversations before they come to this point.
And so if I can continue, Mr. Mayor, I understand what you're saying, Jason. I appreciate that very much. I think that is a good thing. When we look at a dollar amount, it doesn't, in the grand scheme of our, 200 and now over $30 million budget for 25, if we add in the project we just talked about, 75,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but we've got an HR director asking for a staff member that's about that dollar amount, maybe 10,000 more than that. So I realize it's different funds. I realize there's all that stuff that goes into this, but I just get concerned that we would have contractors working beyond what they're approved for, and that gets scary to me fast.
Harold?
Jason, was there a contingency for this project? Typically with a construction project, we have a 10-15% contingency just for matters like this. Did we have a contingency on this project? Did we already spend contingency?
Harold, I'd have to go back and look. Generally, yeah, there is a contingency. I'd have to go back and look at what the original award was and if there was or not. I think since there's a budget amendment attached to the contract amendment, obviously, if there was contingency, we had depleted that, but there weren't any huge change orders, so I may have not done a contingency on this project.
So if I may continue, Mr. Mayor. So in response to Alderman Blessum's question and concern about process and those types of things, typically we would have a contingency in there. We do run into surprises when we have a construction project, those kinds of things. So typically, staff would have the administrative right that as long as we're within that contingency to approve whatever. But then once we get beyond that contingency, that's typically when we would bring it back to council to get further approval to allocate those funds. And staff would then be communicating to the engineer and the contractor that it's not a go until it's formally approved by council and funds have been allocated to move forward.
Okay. Rob?
Harold, then real quick, are you saying this is part of the contingency funds, or you believe this would be?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Fuller, that's why I asked the question if we had a contingency on this project and if we'd expended it already. So it sounds like since we're asking for a budget amendment, we probably either went through the contingency and this is an addition and above that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller.
Yes.
Moving on to item 8.4, the Transit Center, First Street parking revision. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I would
Yes.
move approval of the staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Moving on to item 8.5, staff direction on ornamental lighting ordinance. How do we proceed with this one? Just open it for discussion?
Or a motion could be entertained to,
Yeah.
on whether or not to adopt the staff recommendation or an alternative.
I believe there were 3 options in the memo, and the recommended action was alternative 2. So it would be a motion on any of those, or
Mr. Mayor,
Paul?
I'll make a motion to adopt alternative number 2 as recommended by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, just one quick thing. It appears with this, and I know the airport director expressed some concerns, this leaves it a little bit open-ended with the airport director's oversight. Is there, I think we were talking about something specific related to the M building, is that correct? And it really, that's the main scope of it. I assume it could be something else if she felt strongly, but that's the main focus.
We'll have Jen come up.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessam, yes. Originally, when I had spoke on this particular topic, it was in relation to the planning department coming to me when the M building, Epic had requested putting a basically like a rotating beacon on top of their the M building when they were doing the signage and lighting for that building. They came to me and asked me if there was any restrictions, FAA restrictions, air traffic control restrictions upon that type of lighting being installed on top of a building. And I spoke with our air traffic controllers. I also spoke with an individual who works with Trinity as one of their helicopter pilots. And we came to the conclusion that it would be unsafe for navigable airspace at the time. And so that proposed plan was rejected by city planning for Epic to install that type of lighting on top of the building. So when it came to the ornamental lighting for downtown, my recommendation would still stand. Lighting that would obscure pilots' visibility or have it mistaken as a location where they could land, and or there are certain types of lights such as laser lights that are unsafe for pilots if they are pointed in the direction of an aircraft. They can cause damage to eyes and other things.
Okay, so if I can continue, and so you got to a point that I was a little bit worried about. So if we have a set of lights on either side of Main Street that are visible from above that shoot off into the distance like 2 straight lines, does that look like a runway? And do we have this exact same question for you to determine whether that's okay?
Yeah, I mean, I don't foresee a pilot mistaking that as a runway necessarily. It would be the same as like your city streets could be mistaken as a runway, something like that. Pilots are usually a little bit more intelligent than that and understand what a runway looks like. But with a rotating light, It looks exactly like a beacon, and certain colors of beacons indicate different types of airfields, whether it's a helipad versus a military runway versus a civilian airport like ours.
Rob?
You're not in any way, though, suggesting that the rope lights or the strip lights they're putting on the buildings between 19 and whatever foot high would in any way interfere with the airport or landing of a plane or anything
No,
like that?
no.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Jim. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bittner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Blessam, Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion passes. Moving on to item 8.6, the 2024 water main replacement budget amendment. What are the wishes of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Rob. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. Discussion. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Bittner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Blessam.
Yes.
Motion passed.
That takes care of our action items. Now moving on to item number 9, that's personal appearances. Now is an opportunity for you, for those who wish to come forward and address the council. And the only request is that you keep your comments to 5 minutes out of respect for others who wish to speak to the council. So now is your opportunity. Second call. Seeing none, we will move on to item 10, miscellaneous and discussion items. Item 10.1, the Brown and Brown presentation.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for having me this evening. My name is Katie Vidal. I am a senior benefit consultant with Brown and Brown. We serve as your employee benefit consultant for the city of Minot, and I appreciate you having me here today to discuss your self-funded benefit renewals. That's going to include your self-funded medical plan, your self-funded dental plan, and your self-funded vision plan. So kind of the topics of discussion for today, as I mentioned, we're going to go through your renewal, your medical renewal. We're going to go through some considerations we've brought to the table, and then we'll go through your dental and vision renewals as well. And then you'll see there was some appendix included in your packet as well, in the event you have additional questions that we can help address. So kicking it off with the 2025 medical renewal, you're going to see me go through a couple different components. As a self-funded health plan, there's several things that go into what we budget for your self-funded, we call it your funding levels. Also could be compared to what you may be familiar with as fully insured premiums. So what goes into that is going to be your administrative fee, your stop loss premiums, our estimated claims, and then additional fees and taxes that the city may be liable for throughout the upcoming plan year. So with that, I'll kick it off with the plan design. So we always talk about plan design because that impacts everything downstream. So what you're gonna see on the screen here is on the left-hand side, you're gonna see what your current plan design is. You're gonna see that mostly mimicked in the next column under renewal. And then you're going to see we're proposing 2 different alternate options for your consideration. The only difference between the current plan and the renewal plan is there is a recommended change from Blue Cross Blue Shield in order to make your plan compliant with the mental health parity rules. They are recommending a change to your current emergency room cost share. Today, your cost share is $150 copay plus 10%. In 2025, they are recommending that you would apply your deductible and co-insurance rather than having a copay. And that's just to ensure that mental health services have parity across the board or are equal to other services that may be rendered in similar settings. We'll revisit those two plan design options here in just a moment, but the majority of the differences are going to be in the co-insurance, the proposed out-of-pocket, and then you'll also see that same proposed emergency room change. So your current plan has an actuarial value, and when the Affordable Care Act came out, the federal government came out with a system where they can assign a value to your plan, also known as your actuarial value, but they market it as a metal tiering system. So platinum plan being your richest benefits down to your bronze plans, which are your least rich benefits. So how this works is a platinum plan, for example, is actuarial value of 90% or higher. So what that means is typically the member is going to pay 10% of the cost of services and the plan will pay 90%. So today, the city of Minot is on a platinum plan with your actuarial value being 90.55. So you're right at the platinum status. So the first part of your renewal is your administrative fee. This is a fee that you pay to the carrier, who's currently Blue Cross Blue Shield, to administer your self-funded plan. This is going to include things like paying and adjudicating your claims. You use their medical policy, you use their customer contact center. They develop things like your summary plan description, your ID cards, things like that. All the things you as a administrator of your plan likely do not want to take on administratively. So that fee is currently at 6.4% of claims paid. So for every dollar of claim you pay, it would be 6.4% is paid to Blue Cross Blue Shield in an administrative fee. Because we are estimating your claims to remain relatively stable in this upcoming plan year, we're calculating a very minor increase to your administrative fee, just over $1,200 from your current budget. So a very favorable renewal on that piece. The second piece is your stop loss renewal. So what stop loss is this is a insurance purchased by the self-funded plan to limit your exposure. And you have two different layers of stop loss insurance. Your first layer is going to be individual stop loss, and arguably the most important. So this is, your current threshold is $100,000. And what that means is for every belly button that is insured on the City of Minot's plan, the city is responsible for the first $100,000 in claims for that individual per plan year. Anything above that $100,000 is paid by the stop loss carrier, in this case, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield. So you have $1 million claim come in, the city pays the $100,000, Blue Cross would be responsible for that $900,000. So it's essentially limiting your risk on an individual basis. You also have a feature called aggregate stop loss. This is to protect your plan as a whole. So if your claims as a whole are running higher than what we and Blue Cross are estimating them to be, again, the stop loss carrier will kick in if your claims reach 120% of what is expected. So think of maybe a year like a pandemic, or you're having a larger than normal claims volume. Typically that's when your aggregate insurance comes into play. Pretty rare that we see groups hitting an aggregate, but nonetheless, we want to ensure you have that protection in that event. So your stop loss renewal from Blue Cross Blue Shield, you're going to see again in that first column is your current stop loss premiums. You're going to move into your renewal to see your renewal stop loss, which is coming in at a 15.7% increase from Blue Cross Blue Shield. I'd say that's pretty close to what we're seeing on a lot of our groups right now. And then we've also provided two alternate options for you for consideration. We have a $125,000 threshold and a $150,000 threshold. So what that means is that the city would be taking on a little bit more risk per individual, but you're going to see that your stop loss premiums go down for taking on that additional risk. I'll show you here in a moment, but we do an analysis called a high-cost claim analysis, where we take a look at the high-cost claims that are currently occurring in your group, and we take a look at if you were to take on that additional liability, we want to make sure that the savings and stop-loss premium is enough to cover that additional liability so that you're not coming out maybe paying less in stop-loss premiums, but also paying out more in claims. So with that, we are comfortable recommending both the $125,000 and the $150,000 options to the City of Minot, and I can speak to that a little bit more here in just a moment. These next two slides have a lot going on, so I'm not going to go through these line by line with you, but these next two slides are to illustrate our claims projections. So we take into consideration Blue Cross Blue Shield's underwriting projections, but then we also have an individual on our team as a financial consultant that also goes through the underwriting. We estimate first what we're expecting your claims to be the remainder of this plan year, and then we project them forward into the next plan year. So that's where we're getting your claims estimates or what we're expecting your claims to be moving forward in 2025. So this is factoring in inflation for both medical claims and pharmacy claims. So putting that all together, if you were to renew as is today, no plan design changes, no stop-loss changes, this is where we're sitting today. We are expecting your rest of year to come in under budget at about 4.7% under what we budgeted, which is very favorable. When we forecast into the 2025 renewal, we are estimating with no changes made, you'd be looking at a 6.5% increase from your current budget. Now, what you're going to see is that's factoring in all those things we talked about. It's factoring in your admin expenses, your stop-loss expenses. It's factoring in our expected claims. And it's also factoring in other fees and taxes, such as consulting fees, Affordable Care Act taxes, and things like that. So this is encompassing all of the expected expenses we would anticipate for your self-funded plan for 2025. In collaborating with your administrative team, HR, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Lakefield, we also narrowed down some different options from both a plan design and a stop-loss perspective to show you tonight. I want to share that we certainly have the ability to present additional options if discussion leads us to that point. But for 2025, again, the things we want you to consider are going to be a plan design change, first being that out-of-pocket maximum. Currently, I have your current out-of-pockets illustrated, and we've modeled out two different plan designs. One is an out-of-pocket maximum for an individual of $5,000, $7,500 for an employee plus children, and $10,000 for a family policy. Option two would be looking at a $7,500 out-of-pocket for an individual, $11,250 for employee plus children, and $15,000 for a family. Another option we're looking at is increasing the coinsurance. The members today have 90% coverage. We'd be looking at an 80% coverage. I also mentioned that emergency room change as a result of that mental health parity requirement. And then the last change we haven't discussed yet, and I'll discuss here in just a moment, is some consideration for a particular class of drugs called GLP-1 drugs. And then the second consideration is the stop-loss thresholds of either $125,000 or $150,000. So if we put those together, we kind of married a couple of those things. So again, option, that second column, that renewal, is if you were to make no plan changes at all. Option one is going to be increasing that coinsurance from 90% to 80%, and it's going to be that increase to the out-of-pocket maximum up to $5,000 and that emergency room change for mental health parity. The second option is, option one also includes $125,000 stop loss, so going up one level on that. Option two is increasing those out-of-pocket maximums just a little bit more, so putting a little bit more cost share onto the members, and then also the city taking on a little bit of additional liability at $150,000 stop-loss threshold. What you're going to see is at the bottom, the actuarial value of the plans are all going to be displayed. So what that would mean is you guys would be looking at moving to a gold tier plan, which is also still a very, very rich plan. And I would say what we see in most of our public sector groups that we work with in North Dakota. So rest assured, either option you were to go with, if you were to consider an alternate option, would still remain a gold tier plan. The other thing I want to point out is at the bottom of the screen there, you're going to see we have that tool we use can also estimate approximately how many people on your plan are going to be impacted by a change like this. It's not an exact calculation because, of course, we don't know what's going to happen in the upcoming plan year, but we have reasonable assumptions to believe option 1 would impact about 12 individuals on the plan, or 12 people enrolled in that individual policy, and 1 family. If we were to look at the option 2, we'd be looking at about 22 individuals impacted and about 4 families on your plan. So with that, putting that together, that option 1 is going to be your current $250 deductible, that 80% coinsurance, and then that $5,000 out-of-pocket maximum for individuals at the $100,000 threshold. Option 2 is going to be that $5,000 out-of-pocket at the $125,000 threshold, and then option 3 is going to be that $75,000 or $100 out-of-pocket maximum at $150,000 threshold. What you're going to see in the middle there is, if we take a look at that total expected budget, if you were to renew with option 1, so keeping your current stop loss threshold but making some slight plan design changes, you'd be looking at a 2.7% increase from your current budget. Oops, excuse me. Option 2, you'd be looking at a 1% decrease from your current budget. And option 3, you'd be looking at a 5.2% decrease from your current budget. Now, with that being said, from our perspective as your consultants, we typically do not encourage you to decrease the premiums that you have set. It's typically harder on employees to have kind of that yo-yo effect of seeing a decrease and then maybe seeing an increase. What we see is most people are very happy if you're able to keep the rates flat, and then any additional, say that 5.2%, for example, any additional funding that is not used could go back into the reserve to potentially buy down future renewals if need be, or if you had a hard year. So with that, I'm going to pause for a moment. I know I've addressed a lot of things. Are there any questions I can address at this time?
Are there any questions? Seeing none, we're good to go.
Thank you. All right, so I mentioned I was going to talk about GLP-1 drug coverage, and we don't have this factored into the underwriting in any options, but something really popular, you're probably seeing a lot of talk on TV, social media about these GLP-1 drugs. Some of the drugs that this includes would be drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, Rybelsus. So you probably see a lot of ads here, a lot of buzz about those drugs. The reason we're bringing this to the table is we are seeing a really dramatic increase in the utilization of these drugs across the state. And we want to encourage groups to, not that we're against the utilization of these drugs, we just want to make sure we're being responsible stewards of your health plan at the same time. So today these drugs are FDA approved to treat 2 different diagnoses. The first is going to be diabetic. So those with a diabetic diagnosis. The second is going to be for weight loss purposes. That being said, there's currently, I believe, over 50 that are diagnoses that have been submitted to the FDA for additional approval. So what that tells us is that these drugs aren't going away. They're going to continue being utilized, and likely we're going to see higher utilization. The concern being these drugs come at a cost of about $1,000 to $1,500 per month for these prescriptions. So currently the city of Minot, just for weight loss purposes alone, is spending about $42,000 annually, and we're projecting that to increase as time goes. So you do have a couple different options. You can continue covering it today like you do your traditional formulary drugs. So that essentially means no plan change. However, just keeping in mind this is going to continue to impact your utilization, which ultimately impacts your budget at the end of the day. You can remove coverage for weight loss drugs, so you can choose to exclude this as a coverage option. We do recommend keeping it for diabetic diagnosis, but this would be an option for removing it for weight loss purposes. And then the third is kind of a hybrid. You can remove coverage through your health plan, but there are partnerships you can pursue with a compound pharmacy where members can fill it directly through a compound pharmacy, receive the drug mailed to them at their home. And the benefit of that is the member's still able to access the drug, but it's at a fraction of the cost. And then you as a self-funded plan could choose if you wanted to pick up all or a portion of that cost, or if that would be the member's responsibility, and you're simply connecting the two avenues. Some statistics on the topic I felt might be helpful to you. Cigna recently did a study because there are some really great perks with these drugs. A lot of people lose weight and see a ton of other benefits through these drugs. But what we're seeing from Cigna is that they did a study to see what the return on investment of these drugs is. So is it worth investing this money up front to maybe see some better health outcomes down the road? And what they found is it takes utilization of these drugs about 24 to 30 months before you're going to see a return on investment. However, 60% of GLP utilizers no longer take them after 6 months of being prescribed. 1 year ago, approximately, GLP-1s made up of about 1% of all pharmacy spend across the industry. It's already tracking this year at 3%, and we're only expecting that to go up. And then, as I mentioned, there's currently 54 additional diagnoses out there being reviewed. So that concludes the information I have prepared for the medical presentation, but I'd be happy to address any questions at this time.
Are there any questions? Mike?
One quick one, thank you. I just want to make sure I'm clear with the numbers that you gave. You're already trending the GLP drugs into the numbers, right? So the numbers you're giving us for 25 already have at whatever you know so far?
Yeah, they're factored into your claims estimates currently. If you were to decide to say no longer cover the weight loss, we can deduct that from the underwriting if you'd like us to. Some groups choose to take a more conservative approach and say, let's see how the first year goes and impacts our utilization, and then we'll maybe include it. So that's kind of up to you guys as a self-funded plan on how you want to account for that. But good question.
Any other questions? Continue.
All right. So dental and vision will be quick. Dental is also a self-funded plan, so works very similarly to the medical plan. You pay 8% of claims, and then you pay your own claims expense. And we're coming in with a 0% increase recommendation on your dental plan. And going forward to vision, we're also recommending a 0 increase to your vision plan, and we also are including a vision plan enhancement. Your current frame allowance is $150 annually. We would be moving this to $225 annually, so a nice enhancement for those on the vision plan. Any questions on the dental or vision?
I don't see any.
All right, well, that is my presentation. If there's anything I can help to address, I'd be happy to do so.
Are there any questions? Thank you so much.
My pleasure, thank you.
Moving on to item 10.2, the council budget, the council president's letter of recommendation on the 2025 budget. Mark, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've been here a long time tonight. I'm not going to extend the meeting by going into these. I've made 5 recommendations, and you know, they're in the letter. I would simply ask that they be given consideration as we go forward with the discussion on the budget.
Are there any questions or comments? Mike?
Yeah, just one quick comment, and I just want to be clear for everybody and make sure that we verify this. So, Mark, I appreciate talking about the property tax initiative a little bit. That's an important data point that we're going to have coming here. One thing to note with that, I believe it is the 2024 amounts that have already been locked in. So there isn't a thing that we change in the 2025 budget that impacts anything whatsoever for what the state would be required to replace. I just want to make sure we're clear with that and make sure that we clear that up, because any change to what we do in 25 does not impact that.
Okay. Any discussion, any questions? Harold?
if I may, and just kind of carrying off a little bit from the Brown and Brown presentation, and not that I need direction tonight, but as quickly as possible with regards to the health insurance changes that were proposed. Just a caveat here. So the city manager recommended budget and the current preliminary budget is adopted by council included an assumption of a 5% increase in health insurance. So I just wanted to put that on your radars as well. So any of the three alternatives, well, I guess four alternatives, if you're completely renew it in accordance with what our 2024 plan is, the slice of that's a 6.5% increase, which would be a 1.5% more than what we built into the budget. So in order to make room for that, we would have to cut that funding from somewhere else within the preliminary budget to make room for that additional 1.5%. Secondly, though, is if you chose to approve one of these other three alternatives, those savings would come off. So option one would be a 2.7% increase. So instead of a 5% increase, that'd be a difference of 2.3%. And then if you went with the option two, which is actually a 1% decrease, there would be 6% in the current budget that would not be necessary or obligated anymore. And then if you went with option three, which is a negative 5.2%, that would be a 10.2% reduction in what we budgeted in the preliminary budget. So I just want to make sure that's clear. I will give the caveat, and I'll say this again. I said it to the previous council when we were getting ready to, at their direction, have a wage and benefit committee that went through a lot of this stuff. As a city manager, some of the most difficult and emotional conversations I've been a part of have been changes to employee benefits. And so I urge you to have caution. I tend to be a bit more conservative when it comes to this. I'm not opposed to changes. I'm not opposed to going from a platinum plan down to a gold plan. But I think the more you can phase that out and limit those changes, the easier it is for staff and employees to adjust to that and minimizes the financial impacts that come with that. So I tend to be more conservative. I do tend to advocate more for employees with regards to that. But at the same time, I'm also the city manager trying to balance budgets. I understand the financial commitment that comes with this. And so I'm not against the recommendations and the changes here, because that's going to put us in a better sustainable point in the future with regards to benefits. But at the same time, I would encourage that we take as conservative approach as possible on that. And the quicker we make these changes, we don't have those options to help curb future increases as well. So there's some points that I'd like the council to consider as you wade through this. Again, I don't need direction from the council tonight, but sometime over probably the next month or so, we probably need to talk about that. And the only other final thing I would ask is, so with the council president's presentation of this tonight, some direction from council on how you would like to deliberate and talk through this. Do we need to have some additional budget special meetings scheduled for you to talk about this issue alone? Or do you just want to have it on an agenda item and talk about it with when it's on the agenda for the first reading and second reading? I'm just looking for direction from council how you want to talk through this, so that way if you do want special meetings, staff can make sure that these meetings get appropriately noticed and those kinds of things, and you have the time to take that you need. So in essence, after tonight, this is fully on the plate of the council to discuss, and staff will support however many meetings or conversations you need to have to talk through these issues.
So I'll open that up for discussion. Mike.
Okay, so I'll start here just to answer that directly, Harold, although I do have one other thing I want to go back to from what you said. So, with this in mind, if I remember the process last year, there was the public comment meeting, and immediately after that, there was some work done by council to make some adjustments based on that feedback to do some of the work that was going to need to be done. And then I don't remember if it was just then the final meeting, and I don't remember if there were some additional minor adjustments, but I think it was handled in those two meetings, if I remember correct. Is that, Paul? I think Paul's shaking his head. Does that seem right? I'll be honest, I feel like we need more than that. I'll just throw that out, kind of getting to your question, Harold, and to try to start that. I feel like that September meeting ends up being mostly that, if I remember right. So it's great to hear from the public. We get immediate feedback. We can additionally go into some things. My personal opinion is that we probably need one more meeting that is actual business where we can make adjustments to do that before the final reading. But that's, again, that's one person's opinion at this point.
Are you saying before the final reading or before the first reading?
Well, okay, so put it, I would say after the public comment, because I think we want to hear that. And then I think we would need that before the second reading, because that's obviously where we need to approve it. So, again, another dedicated session. If others feel different, I'm willing to work with what we come up with. But that's my thought, is that we may need that additional time.
So the first reading is on the 16th?
Mr. Mayor, the first reading and then the public comment is scheduled for September 16th in accordance
Then,
with
okay,
state law.
there we go there.
And so if I can continue, Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
we have a natural skip in the every other Monday, which would be the 30th. And that to me looks like an appropriate time where we could maybe slot that additional working session. And I guess, we would know enough from the 16th to know where we're at. I mean, we may know at that point that, we got most of the business done that night, and there really isn't a whole lot else that anybody's pushing for. And we may not need it. So, but I guess I'm trying to plan that we might. So that's my thought.
And just to kind of go off on it, I would, depending on where, best case scenario, yeah, we're done and we can breeze through it. I would prefer to go, myself, I'd prefer to go that week after. I mean, strike while the iron's hot, go on the 23rd. That still gives staff 2 full weeks to, so they're not so pressed. I'm just throwing that out there.
And Dave's going to come up and I will speak that we have some pretty tight timelines here, and with changes that the council makes, there's a lot of behind the curtain work that we've got to do to prepare those to get them reported. And so staff would ask for as much time to be able to do that as possible.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I would prefer that we don't make major changes late in the process. It's a tight timeline. October 7th is our statutory deadline to have this printed and delivered to the county. In particular, when we look at things like the pay plan and how we're going to implement that, we go employee by employee and then allocate those costs out to departments. So it's tedious work. It takes some time. And of course, we want to be as accurate as humanly possible. So I would prefer not to be doing that on Tuesday, with the tight turnaround to get it to the county in just a couple of days. So some guidance earlier in the process or some direction earlier on and would definitely help us out with that.
Dave, is the 23rd, does that give you, that's 2 full weeks, does that give you that kind of time?
Mr. Mayor, I think either date would work. Earlier would be better, in my opinion.
Mr. Mayor, I would agree with Mr. Lakefield. I think if we can get the bulk of what we can done on the 16th, and then the 23rd is just some more tweaking, but the majority of the work being done on the 16th, I think that smooths that out for staff.
Okay. Any other comments? Mike?
So if I could go back to what I was headed for then, and this might be something for Lisa and for Harold, as we prepare our minds for this, because in my mind, we've got incredibly consequential wage questions that we've got to work our way through, as well as benefit questions. And these aren't just trivial, there's real stuff here. My question is, what data do we have? What did our employee surveys tell us? What should we be prioritizing? I mean, staff would say prioritize both, right? High wages, high benefits. I think we understand that. But we do those surveys for a reason. And so what can we understand about what staff are looking for, and how do we make sure that they feel that they're being taken care of while we balance the budget the way we need to?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, I'm going to try and find the email real quick. What I do know is that the most important, so we did a surveying whether it was more important with regards to wages, benefits, or additional help. And by a landslide, the employee response was that wages were the most important. Benefits was secondary, and additional staff was tertiary. That was the priority order. from that survey result. I'll send that out again because I think we sent that out to the previous council, and I don't know that the new council members have that, and I will dig that up and send that to you.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. We will move on to item 11 on the agenda, and that is liaison reports. We'll start with Rob today.
Had our library budget meeting and everything. It's very good. The other one, the Planning Council, the Ward County Planning Council, we're working in there on getting the new Ward County ordinances updated and out. I think it's been a long process for them, and it looks like we're finally gonna get that handled by the end of this year. So,
Mark?
We have a pension board meeting coming up tomorrow, and the MPO meets on Thursday, so.
Scott?
I have the Ward County Planning on there with Rob, and we've had 3 meetings so far, and one was dedicated just to the new ordinance. And then I have a pension board meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Mike?
Nothing to add in that regard, but if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I'll just say a couple things. I probably would have wanted to do them under number 10, but just first of all, I wanted to say thank you to Harold, to Brian Billingsley, to Luke Tillema for making sure that Minot North from the city side will be open on Wednesday and ready to roll. I know Luke worked hard with them on site to make sure that everything looks great, and that's a great, really great news for our community and for everybody that's looking forward to that. And then I just had a couple additional questions, if that's okay at this time.
I apologize, I didn't catch you under number 10, but.
No, that's okay, and I
Go ahead.
didn't make sure I grabbed you, but I was just gonna ask that. So the first question I have, and I don't know, Harold can answer it, or maybe Dave can. So have we closed on the Kemper property? And then second of all, if we have, has the request or the information gone to the state to let them know that that's a flood property, reimbursement's coming, it's going to be placed into the flood world?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Blessum, yes, we have closed on the property. We have not submitted anything to the state yet. The Ackerman team is still working through some of that PER stuff, so we just wanted to make sure that what we had put on paper and just refine that a little bit more, and then we'd take that to the state at that point.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, if I can continue. So can you make sure we get an update when that process gets started to make sure that that's set into flood? Because that was the agreement this council made.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. And then,
Just before Mr. Sorensen leaves, do you have an estimated timeline of when that engineering will be done and when we anticipate making the request to the state?
Not off the top of my head. Let me talk to Ryan, and I'll get back to you.
Is it a couple months? Is it 6 months? Is it a year?
I would think within the next month, we should know where we're going.
Ultimately, that's what I was looking for. Thanks.
and then just one other one in this, Stefan's here, so I'll maybe throw it out there. We got school starting Wednesday. I know we asked this in some of the discussions, but traffic flow is a big discussion in social media and other places. Just wondering how we're feeling about that and what kind of mechanisms we might have in place to track that and make sure we understand how Minot North is flowing, how the new Central Middle School is flowing, and how everything's looking.
Mayor Ross, Alderman Blessum. Yeah, we're aware of the situation. We do have our advanced traffic management system that can kind of give a traffic counts as we go really quick. So we can make signal timing adjustments, whatever we need to do to try to alleviate any pressures that are on the system. So that'll be our kind of the tail end of this week. We'll kind of see how the first week goes. Then we'll try to make adjustments and we can kind of do that as a repetitive process too.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? Anything in your liaison?
No, actually, no meetings, nothing scheduled at this second. So
Paul?
we'll have one.
Meetings later this week.
Okay. That takes us to,
Alderman Olson.
oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Olson.
I'm still here, Mr. Mayor. The one thing that I do want to report on, you have reported on it in the past, but I think it was such a significant thing that I can't not take a minute just to talk about it again. But We had the ribbon cutting for the DCB Downtown CTE Center. It's been a project that this council has been involved in for years, and it was a really sweet day on July 19th to see the ribbon cutting occur and to have students start coming to that building. And so just again, kudos to everyone that has taken time to work on that. That's everything.
Thank you. Now moving on to the final item. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.